Very good, thank you. We will now reconvene the regular council meeting of August 14th, 2023. We are rising from closed session without a report. And the first order of business is 7.1. Linda Laliberte, CAO of Secretary Treasurer of Ganaraska Conservation Authority. Linda, if you'd like to approach the mic. So just for housekeeping, if you just, it's a on and off system, so only one mic's hot at a time. So if you push that button, I'll push mine off and then you're good to go. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Graham, members of council. Thank you for the opportunity to present to you today. I've brought with me Corey Harris, who is our Watershed Services Coordinator, as well as Ken Thazier, who is our Planning and Regulations Coordinator. And as mentioned, I'm Linda Laliberte, CAO, Secretary Treasurer of the Ganaraska Region Conservation Authority. We're here today to present to you a brief background of the Ganaraska Region Conservation Authority, and then some of the the legislative changes that have happened with the Conservation Authorities Act. The Ganaraska Region Conservation Authority is rich in history. The Ganaraska watershed was the first watershed in the province of Ontario to be studied by A.H. Richardson, who later wrote in 1944, the Ganaraska watershed, as you see here in this slide. As a result of the writing of the Ganaraska watershed report, conservation authorities were formed. The background of this actual slide is the minutes of the first Ganaraska watershed project meeting, which was held May 7th, 1945 in Pontypool. Next slide, please. The Ganaraska River Conservation Authority was formed in October of 1946 and was later named the Ganaraska Region Conservation Authority. In following one of the recommendations of the Richardson report, the first tree of the Ganaraska forest was planted in 1947. Next slide, please. The founding principles of the legislation of conservation authorities embody three fundamental strengths. One, they are a watershed-based jurisdiction. So not unlike boundaries of municipalities, watershed-based means what happens upstream affects the downstream, and all conservation authorities are based on those watersheds. Local decision-making is another principle of conservation authority. Elected or appointed municipal representatives sit on the board of directors. Councillor Natchoff represents Cavan Monaghan on our board. Funding partnerships are very important to conservation authorities. In the Ganaraska's case, there are 45% of the funding is from our municipal levy. That's both our general and benefiting. 54% is authority generated through fees and sales, our timber contracts, and some of our other revenue funding events. And 1% is made up of the provincial government through our Section 39 funding of $51,863. Next slide, please. This is a slide of the Ganaraska Region Conservation Authority watershed. We cover 7 municipalities in whole or in part. As you can see from this slide, there are 36 conservation authorities in the province of Ontario, and they are under the umbrella organization of Conservation Ontario. Next slide, please. The Ganaraska Region Conservation Authority has 5 different program areas. Watershed management and health monitoring, which includes our flood forecasting and warning and our geographic information systems. Environmental advisory services, which includes municipal plan input, as well as development plan review. Our watershed services is our community program, and it includes our clean water, healthy lands, as well as our tree planting. Next slide, please. Conservation land management includes our 9 conservation areas, the Ganaraska Forest Center, which sees over 9,000 students each year, and the 11,000 multi-use Ganaraska Forest, which has motorized as well as non-motorized sections within the forest. The authority also engages in sound timber management practices. Corporate services is another program area that supports the delivery of all of the programs within the Ganaraska Conservation Authority. Next slide, please. I wanted to show the jewel within the jewel of the forest, which is our outdoor education center. We house, as mentioned, over 9,000 students go through. They have Ontario curriculum-based programs by Ontario certified teachers on weekends. The Force Center also houses Boy Scouts, Girl Guides, and can be a venue for weddings. Next slide, please. Now I'd like to turn to some of the legislative changes that have occurred recently within the Conservation Authorities Act. Next slide, please. On December 8th, 2020, Bill 229, the Protect, Support, and Recover from COVID-19 Act 2020, received royal assent, which deals with section or Schedule 6 of the Conservation Authorities Act. Some of the changes to that Section 6 included changes to the terms of the board members. They're limited, and that is for the chair and the vice chair. It also introduced the mandatory and non-mandatory programs by categorizing the services and programs that are delivered into 3 different categories that I will speak to later, as well as changes to the planning and permitting programs. Next slide, please. Under Bill 229, there are 3 regulations that were introduced. Regulation 686, which speaks to the mandatory programs and services. This came into effect January 1st, 2022. Regulation 687 relates to the transition plans and agreements for the programs and services. Each conservation authority is required to have a transition plan and also categorize their programs and services into the 3 categories. This regulation came into effect October 1st, 2021. Regulation 688-21 deals with the rules and conduct of conservation authorities. Currently, each conservation authority has their own rules of conduct under a regulation. This will allow for the combining of all of those 36 conservation authority regulations into one. And we will all follow the same regulation, much that we do currently, but it will all be in one. This regulation is not in force yet. Next slide, please. As mentioned, Regulation 687 takes the mandatory and non-mandatory programs and categorizes them into 3 different categories. Category 1 is the mandatory programs and services. They're defined by the regulation, and they include programs such as our flood forecasting and warning. These programs within Category 1 do not require a memorandum of understanding or an MOU. You may hear me refer to it as an MOU. So a memorandum of understanding are not required for the Category 1 programs. Category 2 programs are those programs that are delivered at the request of a municipality. Often conservation authorities will deliver programs such as watershed monitoring at the request of a municipality. Category 3 are other programs and services that are provided by the Conservation Authority. Ganaraska's programs that fall under that category are the Clean Water, Healthy Lands, as well as the education program falls under a Category 3. However, our education program is self-sustaining, and any programs that are self-sustaining do not require an MOU under the regulation. Corporate services are called enabling services. They're also our general operating program, and they also are treated much like the Category 1 programs. Next slide, please. This is a condensed look at our programs and services. The programs and services full listing was circulated in February of 2022 to all our municipal partners. It's also listed on our website. Category, you can see the Category 1, Category 2, Category 3 programs are here. And this is the draft, and we will be looking at that again towards the end of this year. Next slide, please. This chart represents the timelines that are required under the regulations. So December 31st, 2021, the transition plan had to be complete. Ganaraska completed theirs in November of 2021. This is simply an outline on when and how we will be delivering the requirements. This again was circulated to all our municipalities in 2021 and can be found on our website. February 28, 2022 was the deadline for the programs and services inventory that I've referred to. Again, as mentioned, this was circulated. This can be found on our website. By the end of this year, or January 1st, 2024, we have to have the completion of the memorandums of understandings with our municipalities completed, as well as the final programs and services inventory. These are both being delivered and will go to our board of directors in September for circulation in the fall. By the end of December of 2024, conservation authorities need to develop the watershed-based resource management strategy, a conservation area strategy, as well as a conservation land strategy. Next slide, please. Some of the additional legislative changes that I'll mention actually happened December 28th of 2022, while most of the conservation authorities offices were closed for the holidays. And we received notification from the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry that as of January 1st, so 3 days later, conservation authorities were required to identify lands that owned lands by a conservation authority that were suitable for housing. Also informed that changes were to be made to the conservation authority's role in the planning process, and informed that the fees charged by conservation authorities for all programs would be frozen for 2023. Just a note there, Ganaraska has not identified any lands that are suitable that are owned by the Conservation Authority for housing. Next slide, please. So an update on the memorandums of understanding. As mentioned, they're currently being developed. Again, as mentioned, MOUs are only required for Category 2 and 3 programs, not Category 1 programs, as well as not the enabling programs. Within Ganaraska, currently, we do not have any Category 2 or 3 programs within your township. Next slide, please. However, that being said, we are asking all of our municipal partners to sign an MOU for a term of 5 years renewable. Why are we doing that? We're doing that because Ganaraska is being in their MOU a clause that states the participating municipality agrees that Ganaraska Region Conservation Authority may reallocate to Category 3 a maximum of 3% of and that's the levy, of the 3% of the levy that could go from Category 1 to Category 3. Why are we doing that? We're doing that in case 1 year, the outdoor education program, while we do have reserves in case there is a school strike and we are getting no income, but in case something happens that we need to transfer some money. In dollars and cents, what that means to your township is, if we were to base it on the 2023 budget, it's $141 that we would be transferring from Category 1 to Category 3. Next slide, please. Therefore, as I've mentioned, we're going to be asking all of our municipalities to be signing an MOU. We will be meeting with your municipal staff, and then it will go beyond to council. With regards to the MOU, those are going to the Ganaraska board in September at the September meeting. With the expectation, those will be finalized and signed by the end of 2023. And then we will be completing the other requirements, as I've mentioned before, in consultation with our municipal partners by 2024. Thank you very much for the opportunity to present to you.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Linda. Thank you for the presentation. Questions, members of council? Councilor Byrne?
Through you, Chair, I know you don't have any land set aside for housing. Do you have any idea what the government was planning if you did have to come up with some acreage? Were they planning on running it at a housing facility or being forced to sold? What?
My thought on that, we don't, as mentioned, is that they were looking for us to free up lands for housing. I will turn to Ken Thaser, who is our regulations officer in charge of land development. And
Thank you. That is my,
Sorry, just. Oh, sorry, excuse me. We just need a motion to allow Ken to speak. Sorry, because he wasn't on the agenda, so I can get that from Councillor Byrne and Councillor Natchoff. All in favor? That's approved. Very good. Thank you.
through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, that is my understanding that the objective was to free up land for development purposes. And the Conservation Authority, GRCA, did not have any such lands available for development.
But on that note, were you gonna be the landowner at the end of the day, or was the government planning on forcing you to relinquish that, whatever size area it was for housing, to some private thing?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I have no idea.
Thank you for that. Questions? Councillor Natchoff?
Thank you through you, Chair. Is there an example in any of the other catchment areas, municipalities where the government has identified housing available land? And if so, then maybe that will ask Mr. Burns' question as to how the government was dealing with that process.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I unfortunately, I'm not aware right now of what our fellow conservation authorities are doing in this regard.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Huntley?
Through you, Chair, a couple questions for you, Linda. As you know, I sit on ORCA, and I've been sitting on ORCA for a number of years, so I'm very familiar with these regulation changes. So I do have a couple questions about your programs and services inventory. And I know the one that you presented was your draft in 2022, I believe it was. And like, I know there's been a fair bit of debate on what actually falls into mandatory and what falls into number 3. And I'm wondering, is this draft what you believe is your final, or is there still another draft floating out there? We'll keep building on my question from there.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. This draft, we understand because we did the draft before the changes of planning with regards to the natural heritage review. So that will have to be removed. But our draft is pretty well, we've gone over it, and we do compare it with our neighbors, including the Otonabee, Lower Trent, all of our neighbors, to make sure that we're all on the same page, because many of us share municipalities just as we do. So we're pretty sure that the draft, with the exception of that and maybe some tweaking of our conservation areas, because our conservation lands are also split between category 1 and category 3. So the timber management within the Ganaraska Region Conservation Authority is all part of a category 3 because it is revenue producing.
Through you, Chair, a couple of comments then. So I believe provincial water quality monitoring is into category 1. So I think that one's we have to look at. And I know your drinking water source protection is risk management actually falls into category 3 from what I've gone through. So you might want a couple edits before you get it back to your board, which then kind of leads to the next question, which is timing. Is if you're supposed to have all this for January, and it seems like you're still kind of tweaking your projects and services or programs and services, I believe that then has to get reissued out to municipalities, which then once that's accepted, it goes back to the province for acceptance. And all of that feeds into how you build your budget and present your budget. So it's going to be, you're going to be falling behind on your budget, trying to get it out if you're still kind of tweaking where these categories go. So a little nervous on your timing for you on that one. And then the last thing, you made a comment of the category 3s, and you said it talking about moving apportionment from category 1 to category 3 within the next years if you come up with something, like if something happens. I don't think you can do that. Like, I think a category 3 program has to be identified as a category 3 program. You can't jump between categories. So I don't know whether it was just a mix up in the wording or if that was your intention. So I think you got to be real clear on that one. Thank you.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. It was probably the way I explained it. We are not moving the program. It's all of our general levy right now falls into category 1. So there is no MOU required. However, that being said, if we had to pick up, as I said, it's a maximum of 3%. In fact, I did look at this idea from Orca's agreement. So that's where I took that from, as a matter of fact. And so if we ran into problems in a category 3, and it would only be the outdoor education, because the other programs, if we ran into a problem, they just wouldn't run the same way, because those fees all come in from landowners, and in the outdoor education, they come in from schools. So it's a different funding mechanism. But if we ran into a case where we had an overrun in the budget for the outdoor education program, that would allow us to move a maximum of 3%, which is $37,000 only total of levy from the category 1, not from the program areas, but from the levy dollars into category 3. So we would actually physically move it from all the category. We would reduce the category, some category 1 expenses, and then take that 37. If, again, this is just in case we needed to, and then move it into the category 3 to cover any overruns for the outdoor education centers. So it's not moving the program, it's moving the monies. And so by signing an MOU, it's just, you're just signing it for that one clause, because otherwise we do have a couple of municipalities that we would not have to have an MOU because we only have category 1 programs.
Follow up?
Through you, Chair. I think there's a little bit of a nuance in that I don't think you can just pick up funds either and move them to category 3. The way the budget gets built is you'll have a budget for category 1, budget for category 2, budget for category 3. Right? So if you fall short in your category 3, I think you would have already had to have budgeted for that. You'll have to make up that shortfall and correct it in your next budget. I don't think you can pull from the other side. And I could be completely wrong on that one, but you might want to double check on that one. And I guess the only other statement I think he said that I'm curious about is category 3s are programs that are performed by your conservation authority. They're not tied to any single municipality, right? So even if a municipality may or may not be receiving benefit from the category 3, the conservation authority is providing that program. So you might not see direct benefit, but you can't isolate any one municipality. It's all or nothing in your category 3s, or you limit that program. So it's a little bit of a nuance, right? Where category 2s are programs that you're delivering specifically to a municipality, and that gets documented. And I don't think you said you didn't have any like Anagaska right now, but potentially at some point, right? But those are directed specifically at a municipality, where the category 3s are blanketed across all of them, whether they receive it or not. That's my understanding of category 3.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, our category 3 program, the only one that is directed is it's actually a stewardship program. So stewardship is a category 3, and we have a clean water, healthy lands program that 4 municipalities participate in. And so they provide $20,000 and each municipality, and then we accept applications from landowners to do one of the programs, the stewardship programs within that. So those are actually targeted at those particular municipalities. So we are a unique conservation authority in that we have that set up, and then each municipality also has a board that looks at those, not a board, but a committee that looks at those applications. So that's why it's categorized as category 3, because it is classed as a stewardship, and stewardship is classed under these categories as categories 3. So it is a unique program to Ganaraska.
Thank you. Ms. Hurley.
Thank you, Linda, for your presentation today. Just a question on timing. You mentioned about going back to your board in September, just so that you know that if we have an agreement in front of us, we as staff would review that agreement, provide you comment, and then take it. Once we got it finalized, we take it before our council. So just keeping in mind, our 2 council meetings are in September. I'm not sure if we'll hit the first one because we haven't even met yet or reviewed the agreement yet. But then we have our other council meeting would be, just looking at dates, I believe it's the 18th of September, and then we go into October. I just wanted to let you know, I doubt if we're going to be able to hit your timeline within your board.
Again, through you, Mr. Mayor. Sorry, my communication of the timeline. So it's going to our board, and then in the fall, so after October, November, we'll get it back to our municipalities so that we can have some dialogue with your municipality about, and then it can hopefully in time for possibly a November meeting or your October meeting. So recognizing that your timelines as well. So it was just my communication of that. I apologize.
Yep, and just in that regard, just in case there is feedback that needs to be done, it would be probably behoove us all to try to get to the November meeting so that we do have some time beforehand in case there needs to be back and forth. So we'll look forward to that. Other questions? Councillor Byrne?
Through the chair, excuse my lack of experience. You've had the 3 categories prior to, for quite a while, I think it. No?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, those categories came into effect the way that we are doing it, just in to have them set up for February of 2022. Previous to that, we did not have that type of structure. And I will say again too, or I haven't said, because we are organizing into categories, it will have no effect. Some municipalities wonder if it will have an effect on the levy, if it will increase, but it will have no effect on an increase in levy other than the normal yearly. But we have not had those specific 1, 2, and 3 categories. It's just been a year.
Seeing no other questions, thank you for the delegation or for the presentation as well, and all the information and all the hard work that everyone does. Thank you everyone for coming today. I'll look for a motion from council to receive the presentation for information. Deputy Mayor Huntley and Councillor Natchoff, all in favor? That is approved. Thank you very much, Linda. Thank you everyone for joining us today. The next order of business on the agenda is 7.2, Jane Colbert, Age Friendly Coordinator from Age Friendly Peterborough, with regards to the action plan. Jane, welcome.
Thank you. Age Friendly Peterborough was developed in 2017 when the Community Action Plan was launched. The report card that was provided provides an overview for the last 5 years. The 2017 plan was evaluated. We did some community consultation and we incorporated feedback into a new plan that is for 2023 to 2027. So I'll provide a brief history of Age Friendly Peterborough, some successes, and the future plan to build an age-friendly community that supports healthy aging. Bye. In 2007, the World Health Organization, WHO, started a movement where active aging is regarded as a lifelong process, and they defined an age-friendly community as one where policies, services, and structures related to the physical and social environments are designed to support and enable older people to live in a secure environment, enjoy good health, and continue to participate in their communities. Peterborough demonstrated our commitment to becoming age-friendly in 2016. Age Friendly Peterborough is proud to be part of an international movement. Next. Age Friendly Peterborough Advisory Committee, known as AFPAC, was developed to oversee the implementation of the Community Action Plan. And 4 working groups were established to drive actions related to their respective priority areas. Next. AFPAC is an advisory committee with council representatives from the City of Peterborough, Peterborough County, Curve Lake First Nations, and Hiawatha First Nation. Each council assigns a community member representative. AFPAC also includes the chair of each working group. Therefore, AFPAC has 12 members. And we also have task forces who focus on particular projects or actions. Next. The Community Action Plan 2017 is organized into the 4 goals, which are basic needs, staying mobile, building relationships, and learning and contributing. And each of the goals had 6 or 7 strategic directions. And then there were proposed activities outlined in this plan. Next. The plan was approved by the City of Peterborough, Peterborough County, all 8 townships, and Curve Lake and Hiawatha First Nation. So Age-Friendly Peterborough supports what we refer to as the Greater Peterborough area. Funding was provided by the city and the county to hire an age-friendly coordinator, and the coordinator has a modest budget that's been augmented by funders such as the United Way of Peterborough and District. Many projects were undertaken by Age-Friendly Peterborough and community partners over the last 5 years. The report card summarizes how the Greater Peterborough area has become more age-friendly since the release of that 2017 plan. A significant project that was accomplished during that time is the Peterborough Senior Service Directory. We know that there is a barrier of older adults in getting information. So this was a high priority for us. You can go on the Age-Friendly Peterborough website, which is peterborough.ca/aging. That's how you access the Senior Service Directory. You can put in something like meal delivery, and it will show you the 12 organizations in the Greater Peterborough area that provide that particular service. We also provided that information, knowing that all older adults are not using the computer. We provided that information to 211. So someone can call, just dial 211, and they can speak to a community navigator. That person has all our local information and they're able to answer the questions. In 2023, by the end of this year, we've received funding from the United Way to do an in-print information guide that will include the directory. So we try to reach older adults in a variety of different communication methods. Transportation continues to be a barrier for older adults from getting to their home and being active in their community. So we'd like to recognize Community Care, who arranged just last year, they arranged 33,000 drives to 2,200 people, and that is in the city and the county. Also, we have the link that provides an opportunity for older adults who are through Curve Lake, through Selwyn, and can go to and from Peterborough. Next. There is a process of being age-friendly, and this was outlined by the World Health Organization as well as our provincial group. So we did define what our local principles were. We assessed need. So that's how we developed the 4 goals. We did our action plan and we've implemented it. So through 2017 to 2022, we've gone through that cycle once. So we're starting through our second cycle where we're keeping the same principles and the principal areas for priority areas, sorry. We did a needs assessment, which was a survey as well as focus groups and interviews. And today we're releasing the 2023 action plan. Next slide. Some of the results from our research I'd like to point out. So one is the number of older adults living in Cavan Monaghan. Oh, it was 19% in 2016, according to Stats Canada. And in 2021, that increased to 21%. To give you some context, in Ontario, it's 19% and Canada is 18%, and our regional average is 25%. And we know this is going to continue to grow because there's a chart on page 13 of the plan that shows that the largest age group in our region is age 60 to 64. And that was done through Stats Canada in 2021. So we know even those individuals have aged. So as we have more people moving to their cottage and retiring, we will also, and people are living longer. So we know that the number of older adults in the area are going to increase. So therefore we will need additional services. The other part of our research I wanted to mention was that the number of older adults who are living in poverty. So for example, there's a scenario in the report that shows with an average income of what you would receive on old age security and guaranteed income supplement, your income or your revenue that's coming in is increasing very monumentally, like 1 to 3%. But your expenses are going extremely higher. So the gap, as years go on, the gap gets larger. So people are unable to stay where they are. Next slide. When we did our community consultation, we also encouraged people to provide comments because these are our impact statements. So there's numbers and then there's hearing from people who are actually living through this. So a couple of quotes that I heard. One is, I told my family, I don't need anything for Christmas. Just buy me Depends, as I can't afford to buy them myself. So that speaks to older adults not having basic needs met. And no one comes to see if I'm okay. No regular community involvement. No one knows I'm here. So that speaks to social engagement and how people are feeling isolated from their communities. Next slide. So the purpose of the 2023 plan is to outline the identified needs of older adults in an action-oriented way and to provide local government organizations and businesses direction on how they can contribute to an age-friendly community. Next slide. Individuals and groups can align and embed their actions with the goals and strategies outlined in the 2023 plan. So this is a different approach than what we had for the 2017 plan because the proposed actions were already stated. And what we found was that particularly with COVID, that organizations changed what they did. So they still did great age-friendly work, but it just was not necessarily outlined in the 2017 plan. So a higher level framework allows for additional actions to be included and more flexibility over a 5-year term. Next. The 2023 plan provides a roadmap that outlines the priority areas. So those were the 4 that I mentioned: basic needs, staying mobile, learning and contributing, and building relationships. And the goals are what will be done to support those priority areas, and the strategies are how the goals will be achieved. So each strategy will have a work plan that outlines specific actions. The work plans are living documents that support the flexibility in implementing the strategies. Next. The first priority area is basic needs. And so this is how we as a community will help older adults have their basic needs met. Basic needs meaning housing, sustainable income, as well as health. Next. Priority area 2 supports transportation and infrastructure to ensure older adults are able to stay mobile in the community, such as enhancing transportation options, infrastructure and accessible indoor and outdoor spaces, and complete and connected community design. Next. The plan ensures that relationships are sustained to ensure collaboration and foster partnerships. So we'll improve system navigation and communication. We'll promote intergenerational relationships, foster collaborative partnerships to ensure older adults feel safe in the community, and promote a diverse representation of aging and inclusion of older adults in decision-making. Priority area 4 ensures that older adults have the opportunity to learn and contribute. So we'll increase connectivity and access to information, support access to leisure, recreation, and social activities, encourage participation in lifelong learning, promote volunteerism, and support employment opportunities. Next. When I use the term we, I'm referring to the greater Peterborough area community. Age-friendly Peterborough provides the leadership and motivation for community action. This is an example of a work plan where lead organizations can include their actions that fall within the strategy outlined in the plan. Age Friendly Peterborough will provide an annual update that outlines the progress of each action through the predetermined objectives and outcomes. The Age Friendly Peterborough Impact Report will be published annually, and the flexibility of the 2023 plan allows for actions to be added or changed at any time. So we ask that I'll be meeting with municipal staff and community groups and asking what they are doing that supports the age-friendly plan. And we can add those onto our work plans, and then we can report on those on an annual basis. Next. So the higher level framework also allows for opportunity to incorporate changing needs of the community quickly. We'll continue to listen to older adults, their families, caregivers, and care providers, the organizations and businesses that support local aging residents. So when a gap is identified, the Age Friendly Peterborough Working Group can prepare a call to action. Next. As projects continue to evolve and include a greater number of community organizations and volunteers, Age Friendly Peterborough will come closer to achieving the vision for Peterborough to be a thriving region that's inclusive, respectful, and accessible to people of all ages and abilities. Next. So the next step for Kevin Monaghan is I'm asking that today, if you can receive the report card 2017 to 2022 and approve the Age Friendly Peterborough Community Action Plan 2023 to 2027. And then support projects that contribute to an age-friendly community, and work with your community in order to find out what it is that your older residents need. And I'm available to help in any way that I can. And then once you put your actions on the work plans, to be able to report those successes annually. Next. And that is my information. And as I mentioned, I am willing to meet with staff or community groups, and so that we can work together so that we can meet the needs of our older adult residents and become a more age-friendly community by the end of our plan in 2027.
Thank you very much for the presentation, Jane. It's great important work, and thank you for the plan and all the information. There was a lot of information to go through, but open now for members of council to ask any questions at this time. Councilor Byrne.
Through the chair, a lot of great talking points there. What I've witnessed here in the township, though, is we more than doubled the property taxes, which impacts anybody over 50 on a fixed income severely in a lot of cases, not all. The other thing you were talking about was community and socialization and getting out and enjoying basically the community itself. We spent a lot of money on a Parks and Recreation study that echoes some of those points to its same idea. You need to get people out, you need to get them involved, you need to come to using their hobbies and enjoying the outdoors. But again, we turned around and made it illegal to run ATVs on the road, even though a large portion of the people I represent felt differently. And on top of that, when we get back to, I don't know how you communicate this 211 number. That's the first I've had any indication at all when I read through these notes. But like, we don't even do regular elections anymore. We went to online, which basically disenfranchises the whole group that you're talking about, the lack of communication and whatever. So I'm wondering how we get over those hurdles. But what I was hoping to find out for you today was, do you have the scope and the reach to get the demographics on the 5 million plus people that have made Canada their new home in the last 10 years, so that somebody like myself could actually look at it and see how those demographics impact our community as a whole, the whole Peterborough County area, right? I just don't know whether you have access to that kind of information, or if you can get it for me, please.
To answer your question about the increasing of taxes and also transportation and communication, we find that those are the barriers. So if you can alleviate those barriers, so as you mentioned, the ATV, and if they're not able to do that, well, how else can they get to where they are from one place to the other? So for example, some municipalities are having a school bus service that does a loop, and it's a particular day of the week, and it does a particular route, and then people are able to get to their appointments. They know to schedule around that. So there's innovative solutions to potentially what the problems may be. So it's just about knowing what those problems are and what your community can do in order to help with the communication and or the transportation issues. The second point that you asked about with the new Canadians, when we did our community consultation, particularly our survey, we did ask what groups that they represented because we wanted to make sure we heard the voice of the diverse older adults. And we, on our website, so it's peterborough.ca/aging, on the homepage, there's a section that's about staying connected. And that gives you the information about from our community survey. You can request the actual results from the survey, and we can also extrapolate. We can look at, although it was an anonymous survey, we can look across. So if someone answered this way on one question, we can look across at how they answered other questions. So if you had something specific, I can pull that for you.
Thank you, Jane. Other questions, members of council? Deputy Mayor Hunley?
Through you, Chair. Thanks again for the presentation, and once again, another presentation from your side. And my question is, these action plans can be kind of overwhelming, and the report cards can be a little, pangalactic. And I'm wondering, when you said you reach out to staff and you talk to staff and see what they're doing, but do you come to staff and tell them what is appropriate to do within our community? Right, and then measure us against what that is, right, versus the entire action plan and the entire report card. Because I mean, it's so big and so all consuming, and there's, obviously we're not going to get, light rail systems out here for seniors, but maybe there is something we do, like a school bus turnaround. So I'm just curious, like, do we have a tailored plan that we can measure against, or is it just the big plan and it all gets fed into it?
In the plan, the four most important pages are the ones that list the priority areas 1 to 4. And I intentionally put those, each priority area has 1 page. So you are able to see what the strategies are. So some have more strategies than others. And that's where you would align the work that you're already doing. So for example, if there's any traffic calming measures, that makes it a safer environment. And for all, right? So that's what the concept of age friendly is if it's good for older adults and it's good for the whole community. So the curb cuts that you do, it's good for somebody who's older, who can't make the step up, someone who has a stroller, someone who's shopping and has a shopping cart. So it's good for all. So to answer your question about the staff, my hope is that I would meet with the staff in the different areas. So knowing that, where does planning fit? And it could be under staying mobile. Where does recreation fit? That fits under learning and contributing. So the hope is that this is not necessarily creating extra work for the townships. It's looking at what you're currently doing and how does that support older adults in your area. But then there is some education too. So looking at that community consultation and what your community needs that you don't have. So that example of the bus. And so I can provide some solutions or potential solutions on what barriers that you're seeing and what other communities are doing to mitigate those barriers. So I can definitely be an educational resource for that.
Follow up, Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, through you, Chair. I guess if I take the example of your curb cuts, Like, and I guess, what is the measure of that curb cut? Like, is it how many curves we've cut? Whether we have a policy in place that whenever we put a curb in, that it's specifically designed that way? Like, does somebody go around and inventory all of our intersections and decide whether they're adequate or not? Like, what's the measurable in this? I guess is where I'm looking for.
That's a great question. And it's also up to the person who puts the action on the plan as to how that will be measured. So it can simply state, and if you look at the report card, we stated how many roadways they improved their traffic calming measures. So we didn't list every single one of them. We just say traffic calming measures were taken. So it could be part of a list of other infrastructure changes. So for example, a roundabout or a median was placed, as well as curb cuts. So it could be just part of a sentence on how you've improved your infrastructure to become more age friendly.
Thank you, Jane. Councillor Natchoff.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair, through you. Thank you very much for your presentation and the great work that you guys are doing. I just wanted to do a follow-up. I know that my time that we had spoken in the past, working with Nexicom, that we kind of, and the BIA had an initiative where we were going to try to work with stopgap, and work towards putting more ramps for the businesses. And I'm just wondering, was this something that kind of got COVID shelved? And if so, what's the plan moving forward? Thanks.
I was hoping you were going to ask that question. We started the age-friendly business program prior to COVID. We had a fantastic task force. We had a student working with us. And then unfortunately, COVID happened and businesses were closed. And then once they reopened, it was a point where this was kind of the last thing on their mind. But now that I think we're past that point, we would like to work with the BIA to get that reinstated again. So now that we have the plan and it's done, it will be one of those action items, and we will be coming to call very soon. Now, to your second point about Nexicom, we've been working with them with the rural communities, and for older adults to have Wi-Fi, and so there's a number of reasons or how they can stay connected, and Wi-Fi in rural areas is one of those. So we've been working with someone from Nexicom to get an update on how that is working.
Thank you, Jane. A follow-up, Deputy Mayor.
Follow up to Councillor Natchoff's question there with the stopgaps. And I understand there's a lot of factors associated with that stopgap program, but I guess if Age Friendly Peterborough is kind of coming to help initiate the program again and get it, revitalized, I guess, for lack of a better term. Like, do you also have the ability to come with a way to, fund it, or, offer channels on how to get this done easier, or, I guess there are a number of bumps in the road that we hit, and I'm assuming that other people hit those bumps and come with the mitigation of how you get through all of that. I'd love to see the program, but I know there were so many gaps in the stopgap program that it just didn't go. I'm just wondering whether you can bring that expertise of the funding models forward, to help initiate that again.
The program provided education for business owners and service providers on how they could be more age friendly. So there's training, and then there's a checklist, and we will offer assistance with those who either have accessibility challenges or are older adults, to actually help the business owner or service provider to go through their physical space as well as their service and communication, to see how they can improve to become age friendly. Once those have been identified, then once the actions have been taken, they are recognized with having an age friendly Peterborough logo that they can put on their door. They will also be listed on our website as an age friendly business. They can learn from each other, so it's also going to be a group of learning of what others are doing. So through that, once they've done their assessment and they've determined what they need, there can be funding that can be sought after that. So for example, with the ramps, there's also another Ring My Bell program. So someone who, if you can't have the ramp out for the whole time because it's blocking the sidewalk, having a bell at the front door so that someone from the business can come out and put the ramp so that the person can have access inside. So there's a number of different things as part of the training that we would review, and we would also talk about how that can be funded.
Thank you, Jane. Other questions? Counselor Nacho.
Thank you, Chair, through you. I did have quite a few seniors immediately in Ward 3. And you had spoken about how you have a shuttle service from Curve Lake and Selwyn coming down to Peterborough. I've had seniors asking if a similar model could be looked at to have access to like a shuttle service to the wellness center for seniors to get out to be able to go and exercise and use the facilities there, or maybe as a shopping thing. Is this something that you guys could help work with the township so that we could look at maybe doing a couple times a week, maybe once in the morning, once in the afternoon kind of thing? Or is this something that our township ourselves has to take on?
I would support you on how, sorry, I haven't been saying through you, Chair. I just realized that now. That's something that I can support in education wise and also connecting. So for example, I know there's a lot of other municipalities who are interested in that model, and Selwyn is willing to provide some assistance with next steps. I believe they're talking about that at County Council. So I think that it may not be the best model for you, as in having continuous service, but something like for example, with Napanee, that they do with a school bus, and there's a set schedule, or even a van or on a smaller scale. I think that would be more manageable for a smaller municipality. So I'm connected very provincially, and so they call it being a knowledge broker and connector in the senior community. So if you're something that the township is looking for, I can assist with what others are doing that is successful and best practices in other areas.
Thank you for that, Jane. Seeing no other, Ms. Hurley, sorry, you had a comment, and then we'll go to Councilor Byrne.
Through you, just for clarification, Jane, so you're looking for council to, one, support the report card for 2017 to 2022. You're also asking council to consider supporting the community action plan from 2023 to 2027. So they haven't really had an opportunity over and above this presentation to really take a look at that. I'm just wondering if there's an opportunity, and I think we need a little more time to take a look and see what those action plans are, and maybe some dialogue with you so that we can maybe have a report from staff that comes back and says, here's how we could contribute, or here's how we could help or assist. I'm just throwing it out there that you're adopting potentially the report card, yes, and we adopted the plan originally for sure, absolutely, but I'm not personally that familiar where we are on everything. And I'm just wondering if we could just pause for a moment and give us an opportunity to sit down with Jane and talk about where we are, talk about what the identified actions are, and how we as a municipality could possibly participate, not given, I don't know if some of them have a financial tie to them, some of them may not, some of them would be a budget discussion, some of them are just a community discussion, some we mentioned about the Parks and Recreation plan. How would that look? Have we had dialogue with our consultants? I'm assuming Jane hasn't, but what would that look like? So maybe that's the first step, is to take a look and see what we're adopting before we adopt it.
Thanks, Ms. Hurley. So with regards to that comment, Jane, is there any, I mean, I don't necessarily think that there's the need for us to approve the action plan and for any of your purposes rather than because it exists in the entity that you manage. But what I was going to suggest was that we just simply receive the presentation today and direct staff to work with Age Friendly Peterborough and come back with a report at a later date about how we can sort of manifest more programs and capitalize on our contribution in the township. Is that agreeable, Jane?
The only impact that would have is on the front page of the 2017 plan. You see that there's a page that says that it has been approved by all municipalities. So that's what my next steps will be. Is I'm not going to print it until I do have approval. So there's no rush in having it printed. So that's the only impact that it has.
Perfect. Thank you. Councillor Byrne, you have a question?
Through the chair. In your experiences so far, is there an area of the greater Peterborough County that you see has priority as far as demand or has utilized your facilities the most? And I worry that Peterborough City would become the focus for a lot of this. And okay, that's good. But just my concern is where you've been spending your time and your resources so far, and just how that's going to play out for the entire county.
That's a great question because, and it is very confusing when it's Age Friendly Peterborough, and Peterborough is the name of the city as well as the county. And we are very clear that we represent the greater Peterborough area and the 2 First Nations. And what happened in 2017 was we were Peterborough Council on Aging. And through the plan is how we morphed into Age Friendly Peterborough. So that took time. And then hiring the coordinator took time. So even the work was being done by the community, but not being recorded and evaluated and monitored through Age Friendly Peterborough for a number of years. So some of when we went back to the people who were listed in the plan and said, can you please provide an update on these actions? People change in their jobs and priorities changed. So we were just able to report on the information that we got. So I think that doing this, the 2023 process of having people include their action and include how it is going to be measured and then report back to us on an annual basis, it's their plan, it's their line on the work plan. So wherever staff or community groups add to our work plan is what will be reported on as successes.
Thank you. So with regards to the discussion, then we talked about a brief amendment to from a reception standpoint, and there's no seeming haste to print the document. So it seems like we're amenable then. So with no other questions, we'll look for, does anyone have any questions about the motions we're going to receive? And staff will come back with a report at a later date after talking to Age Friendly. Any questions about that? We'll look for a mover and a seconder. Deputy Mayor Huntley, Councillor Natchoff, all in favor? That is approved. Thank you very much, Jane. I'm sure staff will be in touch and we'll go from there moving forward. So thank you for the presentation today. Cheers. Very good. Right now, we'll move on to the delegation portion of our meeting today. The first delegation is from Isabella with regards to grading and drainage in the new subdivision. Cindy, is it Carly or Cindy that will be timing? So we have 10 minutes for the delegation. I understand that you provided and worked with staff to have some documents, so we'll work to get those up on screen as you need. Isabella, so when I push mine off, you push your button on the side, it'll light up red, and when you're red, you're good to go, and then just hit it off once you're done speaking. We'll direct questions, okay?
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, Chair Mayor, councillors, and municipal staff. I'm here today to express my reasonable concerns regarding the improper grading and poor drainage issues. There are 3 issues specifically. Number 1, reasonable concern regarding the grading and draining issues on 39 Fern Ridge Heights and other residential properties in the Highland subdivision, and hold the land developer accountable for remediating the current issue as it is duty. Secondly, concerns regarding future planning and building of residential developments in our town. And third, request that council ensures the future planning and building of residential developments will be set to a higher standard of expectation regarding the infrastructure by the land developer by setting a new standard of quality care, effectiveness, and efficiency. We know that the responsibilities of a land developer in a residential area are many. Overall site grading and drainage, construction of sewers, water mains, roads, curbs, sidewalks, installation of streetlights, boulevards. It's a big project. But the area of focus is the overall site and grading and drainage. The builder just builds on the property. May I start with the first slide, please? And I apologize. In order to submit my delegation request, I didn't have my PowerPoint ready, so I didn't want to miss the opportunity to speak to you in person because it makes it difficult through the year because the meetings are at 1 o'clock. So you'll notice that there's water pooling on the property, east side and the west side. Next slide, please. You just see a series of images. Again, and it's a sunny day and the water's still sitting there. Next slide, please. One was just a closer up there alongside on the east side. That one's on the west side. Okay. And these are ones that go in between the property. Perfect. Thanks. So there's water pooling in between my neighbor's property on the east side of my property. There's even excessive moisture and mushrooms are growing in the back. But the closer up picture just prior to that was taken from the angle from the property from the street. This one is looking towards the street. Although the water is pooling, it is my belief and understanding, because this is not my first brand new build. This is my 5th brand new build, 4 detached brand new builds, and a condo. And in the water pooling between these properties, which are in close proximity, creates hydrostatic pressure. It is my understanding. Although clay soil is porous, it is the least permeable, which acts as an aquitard that transmits water at slower rates. So there's more pressure buildup. I'm not a soil expert. I don't know anything of this, but I know that this is an issue regarding the drainage and the improper grading that needs to be resolved. I've had, if you can move to slide 131, because of this pressure, please, sorry. Thanks, Carl. So this is a crack in the foundation, side wall. This happened within the first 2 months. This shouldn't be happening. Sure, you're going to get a couple of cracks in the basement floor. That's to be expected. These are brand new builds. Please turn to slide 132, please. This is my basement floor. This is the same on the opposite side. It's a bungalow. I've had Severio, the builder, the land developer in my basement. And he said, honestly, there's more than I'd like to see. More is, I mean, understatement. These are numerous. This is a result of the pressure that's building and the improper grading and the poor drainage. And it's not just my property. Could you flip to image 138, please? Thanks. If the properties were properly graded and there were proper, I don't know, for lack of a better, proper draining methods, I'm not sure, or just actual follow-up to ensure that it's properly graded, it would significantly minimize the issues of the water pooling, the bacteria buildup, the sidewall crack foundation, the basement floor cracks, the moisture buildup, and the breeding ground for mold within the home as a result of an issue that could be significantly minimized. So I think it is reasonable and a reasonable and warranted solution is to significantly minimize the damage to properties and homes by ensuring proper grading and proper drainage on the lots and hold the land developer accountable. That's my request. You don't have an image of this, but it's on your website. It's the Township of Cavan-Monaghan frequency table, inspection frequency table as it pertains to pre-grading of the lots and swales. Now, if under the column, it'll show that the land developer's responsibility is frequently and our municipal engineer's responsibility as required. So this is regarding the pre-grading of the lots and swales. So perhaps we need to look at the revision of this, revising the frequency of inspection by the Township of Cavan Monaghan. It appears that this would require more diligent inspection of the pre-graded lots and swales prior to any approval moving forward. And the recommendation I make is that the Township of Cavan Monaghan engineers inspect more frequently to hold the land developer accountable as it is as it is its duty, the requirements. That took a while. And secondly, that the land developer engineers inspect frequently the pre-graded lots and swales more diligently to ensure proper grading and proper drainage as they are required to do so. So twofold. I'm not the only one here who stands with these issues of improper grading and poor drainage. There are others. I mean, clearly my neighbors, 41 Fernridge Heights, 37 Fernridge Heights, 10 North Hill, which means their neighbors are impacted, 40 Pristine Trail, which means their neighbors are impacted, 911 Horizon Avenue, 109 Highlands Boulevard, those are townhomes, 107 and 111 as well. I know 44 Bromont, his family's no longer there. They had a crack within the first year. This all goes back to the improper grading and drainage. And these people shared with me, because I put a post on the face wall of the Highlands Millbrook, and they reached out and they experienced the same frustration. These are our properties, our investments, and our homes. I can't even begin to imagine if an elderly, as she's speaking, Jane, that moves to the area and comes with a whole series of these issues, and then they're being covered up with finished basements and people can't see, and the problem still resides there with the improper drainage on their property, and they're not even aware. So I asked council, are we inviting land developers to build real communities? In real communities, we care and we look out for one another and we support one another. Will this council hold the land developer accountable? Will the municipality ensure it? Sorry. To summarize, will this town council hold the land developer accountable for his responsibilities, specifically site grading and drainage, to proper site grading and drainage to remediate the issues on my property, 39 Fernridge Heights, and others that I had mentioned within the Highlands subdivision? Will this town council hold the land developer accountable for his responsibilities, specifically site grading and drainage to address these issues of the residential site in Tower Hill North? Otherwise, this will repeat itself. And thirdly, will this council hold the land developer accountable for his responsibilities, specifically site grading and drainage to address these issues prior to the planning and building of future sites to avoid this? And I'm going to conclude with the most important point here, that this town council has the power and the authority to affect the change. I encountered a somewhat similar situation regarding improper grading and poor drainage in Apple Meadow subdivision in Brighton, where I lived prior to coming to here to Millbrook, to Cavan. And there were 8 properties. There were four backing onto it, adjacent properties, where the water pooled between these properties. And I even had the land developer in my home. And he's saying, oh, it's a builder issue. I said, this is not a builder issue. This is a land developer issue, not a builder issue. And I'd gone to the town, and the township actively listened and ensured a fair, reasonable resolution by having that land developer install a French drain to remove the standing water that pooled. And it was the land developer's responsibility, and the township held him accountable. And I share this example to remind council that although economic growth is vital to the township, and I'm all for it, it is incumbent on the part of the township to ensure that the land developer is held accountable for its duties. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and councilors and municipal staff, for your time and serious consideration in resolving this important matter regarding our community of our current and our future residents.
Thank you for the delegation, Isabella. Before we go to questions, maybe either Mr. Phillips or Mr. Hancock, any insights that you could provide with regards to the issue? I think Mr. Hancock might be more recently familiar, but maybe Mr. Phillips has anything to contribute to the conversation. Then my only other suggestion, maybe Isabella, is if you're able to provide, I think if I'm not mistaken, I thought I had a conversation or email with staff about exploring the Brighton example or what was done by that council. Seeing as you were involved, if you have any insights or can provide any sort of dates or things like that when the delegation was or what was conducted by that council, and just share it in an email to myself or staff, then we can review what they've done and then see if we can accommodate something similar in future discussions with our planning and whatnot legislation. Is that agreeable?
Certainly it is. I have a slide and I apologize. As I said earlier, in order to submit the delegation in time, I have it on the PowerPoint and there is a slide and it is on record with the municipality of Brighton, but I can be happy to forward that to you. Thanks.
Just send it by email, that if it's, can do the research on our own, that's fine. Thank you. Mr. Hancock.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just as a bit of background to this concern, I just wanted to note that the lot grading is specific to the builder. It's not, it is, the houses are completed according to a site grading plan, and it is the builder that provides security to the municipality for the lot grading. The developer does provide security for the overall development, and he certainly is responsible for the majority of infrastructure. But just to get a bit of background to this, I'll sort of take you through the steps that we go through, which are, for the most part, I would say, are the same in the majority of municipalities that I have worked in or am aware of. So we start our process off in a plan of subdivision that's draft plan approved. Prior to the signing of the subdivision agreement with the developer, the consultant engineer who is hired by the developer provides engineering drawings for all the infrastructure, including a master lot grading plan. We then, for the most part, build the roads and construct them. They rough grade the lots. The builders then provide on each property, they provide a siting for the house. And with that, there is specific site grading for individual lots. And that is what is approved by both the engineering department representative and is approved by building for siting. So I'll leave that with Kyle Phillips to speak to the issue on the building side. After the site grading is completed, there's basically a number of inspections that are completed by the consultant engineer. In this case, it was Valdor Engineering. The representative on site now is a fellow by the name of Joe Polotsky, who I consider one of the best field representatives that we've had in the area for a while. And he is responsible for looking after the overall subdivision in Tower Hill North, that it's built according to our municipal and provincial standards. The lot grading is actually put in place in the field, and they have a number of inspections they go through prior to certifying the lot to the municipality. So they do what's referred to as a pre-sod inspection of the rough grading, and they do a after-sod inspection of the grading. They provide us with a drawing that is checked off and is referred to as a certification by the consultant engineer, really saying that the grading was completed according to the master grading plan overall, but according to the site grading plan as provided by the builder. After that, we look for all lots, kind of as our final wrap up. All lots in the subdivision are to be certified as completed in that fashion. And if we do receive complaints, and I don't remember, I have just recently spoke to this lady, but I don't remember having been advised on this lot that there was a problem. I did speak to the builder. I have spoken to the consultant engineer, and they basically have said that the lot is built according to the plans and that the drainage is functioning and they don't believe is affecting the basement at all. So in regard to the subdivision process and the lot grading process, this is a standard across Ontario that I'm aware of. It's certainly one that's used in the GTA. It is a process that's in the city of Peterborough and is in place in this township. And it holds the developer and the builder and the consultant engineer responsible to ensure that it's built according to the drawings that they provide us with. So in regard to the grading, we have a sign off, a certification by the consultant engineer. We have a drawing that indicates site grading. And from what I know, the lot is built according to that grading plan. In regard to the basement and the building code items, I'll refer that to Mr. Phillips for his comments. But generally, our standard is higher or one of the highest in the province. So I don't think there needs to be any changes, and I certainly wouldn't recommend any changes to the process that we follow.
Mr. Phillips?
Yeah, through you, Chair. Just to add to that, Wayne covered pretty much our process. I have been working with Isabella to look at the site recently. So far from what I've seen, and we've been back and forth on emails this weekend, and I believe I'm going to pop out there this afternoon because we had some significant rain on the weekend. From what I can tell, just from the last site visit, there was a rainfall the day before. The swale was still pretty dry, so it looked to drain whatever came down that day. I don't have the stats on how much rainfall we had at that time. Just from, and I've mentioned this to Isabella, from my eyesight, the swale looks to be graded properly. There's a couple spots that may have settled a bit where there might be some ponding, but, and I did mention to Isabella, at this time, I don't see that there's a hydrostatic pressure issue now. I don't know if there was ever before, but I'm kind of coming in after the fact. With regards to the cracking, we have looked at that, but unfortunately it was sealed already. And if you can maybe explain who did the sealing and if Terrion was involved in any of that.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Well, I want the focus to be on the real issue at hand, the improper grading and the poor drainage. The foundation was has happened as a result of it, and I'm well versed with Terrion. I want to go back in terms of, and I apologize because I wanted to speak to that point, a higher standard in Ontario. This has not been my experience with this land developer. It is, and this is no easy feat when you're developing land, that's for sure. And I want to say with Joe Pulaski, I know Joe, I've met Joe because I actually had to, and this was a different issue also that fell under the responsibility of the land developer, was that the curb and the driveway, the aperture wasn't wide enough. So I had to wait in a year or so until they actually had to come back, break it open, like crack it and redo it. And then they added a little bit of extra driveway, if you will, as a compensation. But that was a land developer issue. And I come back to the point of a land developer issue regarding the grading and the draining. And yes, thank you for coming by and stopping. Thank you to Mr. Byrne for responding, coming to take a look too after I sent my email prior to the delegation. And this water is pooling at various parts of my property. It's not just, and that the proximity to these homes, which is new with this builder, this land developer, when they're building the homes here. And that shouldn't be an issue if there's proper drainage. And that is my point. And sure, the sun's going to absorb it, but you saw those photos there. My foot was there. The water was pooling. It was sunny. And I'm not, how would I say this? How can I couch this? I appreciate you inviting the question. There is an issue here that needs to be remediated and the land developer needs to be held accountable. His standard is not that high. I'm not even talking about the quality of the build. That's a whole separate issue that I share with Terrion, and there's issues there. So let's make that distinction and and as I mentioned on the frequency table, as your responsibility as required, do you just look on paper? And I don't say this offensively because I don't know the process. When you look at the site grading and do you go out, how often, what does as required mean? Does it mean once every 6 months during the development, once every 2 months? And how many, and maybe you have to look at a handful, because is it realistic for you to be able to go and look at everybody's property? Probably not. But I'm just asking that this council take this reasonable concern of improper grading and poor drainage that's not only impacting me, but my fellow residents within the Highlands of Millbrook and future residents in Tower Hill North.
Thank you. Was there more to your comments before we take it over to questions? Mine will turn off eventually. I'm sorry.
There we go. Through you, Chair, I don't know how much you want to address today. We still are working to resolve Isabella's drainage issue and look at that one. I can't really speak to the other ones. Drainage has a lot of nuances. So if there's other people having drainage issues, they haven't brought to me. I've been aware of them. There was one property owner in the subdivision, but they're all unique. So we can't just kind of say they're all having issues and they're swale related. There's a lot of nuances to drainage. It's very difficult to just say. So there may be other issues, but I'd have to look at those sites. Again, with regards to this, I was making the comment about the cracking because just from a building code issue saying typically Terrion would be involved. If there was a structural issue though, where you have hydrostatic pressure cracking a foundation, that's major. The proper step for that would be to have an engineer review it. So because we're coming in after the fact, we're trying to deal with what may be a drainage issue. The other thing on municipal staff is that we're burdened with evidence. So if we want to take something back to get it resolved that we really think is a hydrostatic issue, that's something that's serious, we need to be able to have the evidence to say, this is what's causing this and this is why. So I know it's your opinion that's hydrostatic pressure. I've told you I don't see it to date and still could be there. But again, we have to prove that that water is causing the foundation cracks. I don't see it, and especially in the slab. So foundation would be one thing where there's pressure, soil pressure against it, but the floating slab in your basement is not structural. That wouldn't be like sideways pressure there. That would be a pressure coming from underneath if that's what it was. There's a lot of other possibilities of what that cracking usually is. Different mixes of concretes, curing time, all that type of thing. Again, hard to say after the fact what it is, especially since it's been sealed. I can't see any of that, but usually what the situation is when you have that major of a concern is you bring in an engineer to assess it all to deem something caused by pressure. So I don't even have the expertise to say whether or not, I can say my opinion, whether I think it's hydrostatic pressure. So the point being is I'm still working with you to try to obtain the evidence, because if a swale is full of water, and I know you've done your best to get pictures and videos, but if it's full of water on the day it's raining or shortly after, that might mean it's doing its job because the swales are supposed to direct the water to where it's out to the street or to whatever storm sewer. So just because it's full of water and it could be a foot deep, I have swales in my house that in the country that were quite full on the weekend, 2 feet, but it was gone after that. So if it's dissipating, if it's being removed somewhere, it's actually doing its job. And that's what we kind of had a brief conversation about before here. So if there was a lot of rainfall on the weekend and today it's dry, it's done its job. So what we kind of need to prove or to look at with you is that soil or is that water going away or is it staying? And I know in the one spot it was a bit of ponding, but the point, again, my point here is that the swale taking on water is its job to do. So the pictures, they do kind of tell a bit of a story, but they don't really give us the evidence that we need to get that remediated. Does that make sense? Oh, yeah.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Part of it does make sense, and part of it I'm still not convinced. A lot of these residents here, these are their first brand new, the next door neighbors, that's a young couple with children, 3 kids. This is their first brand new build. They don't know who's responsible for what, land developer or builder. And so what is the builder directing them? To go through Terrion, go through Terrion. No, this is a big problem that needs to be remediated. And I understand, and I don't know all the terminology, hydrostatic pressure. When you came, it was a term that you gave, and because all I could describe was there's water. These houses are they're close together. There's water building up. I had a crack on the exterior of my foundation. I have a crack on the interior of the foundation at the same site. At the same site, it runs the length. Oh, and the builder has it all insulated from top to bottom, so most people don't see that. I mean, it's a good thing to have it insulated in one regard, if that's what the purpose is. But I'm not completely convinced in answer to your question, but I appreciate you working with me, and I hope this council will work together to ensure that the land developer is held accountable and that the municipality is moving forward to try to help support its residents to resolve this issue regarding the improper grading and the poor drainage. And I had one more point, and it escapes me at the moment. It'll probably come back to me at a later time. But thank you.
Thank you. So it sounds like from my understanding that Mr. Phillips is going to be out there again shortly and If there are other individuals, I know Kyle's a busy person, but it's his job to be busy. And if there's other individuals, like you said, it's, every house is different and there could be common issues and common, side effects or evidence of issues as well. And as Kyle said, I'm not an engineer. And I will look forward for staff to continue to follow up with this. And like I said, if you can provide the right information to me, I'll forward it to them and we can go through that channel as well, if that makes sense. Sorry, I gotta turn mine off first.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So to forward the information directly to you and to, I'll stop. I'll just CC you. Okay, certainly. Thank you very much for your time.
Questions, Councilor Byrne and then Deputy Mayor Huntley.
Through the chair, I apologize. I meant to ask you the day I was in your basement looking at that problem. Do you notice your sump pump running a lot, or has that been a constant issue? I know I agree with Kyle. I think the floor issue is a separate issue from the foundation issue. I made a point of going through the show homes back 5 or 6 years ago when they were first built and first opened, and cracking in the basement floors was totally consistent with what you're experiencing years later. But I just wondered what the sump pump issue was maybe at your location.
There is no sump pump in any of these homes. That's why I don't know, and in terms of the quality of what they use underneath, I don't even know how to comment to that, other than we don't have a sump pump and it seems just waterlogged. So what's causing the waterlogging?
Deputy Mayor Huntley or Mr. Hank.
Mr. Mayor, just to clarify, this subdivision is built with gravity storm connections. So the storm connections are connected to the Weeper. There is no sump pump required in the houses, but the storm system is separate from sanitary, and it has an outside wrap, as Kyle will note, on the foundation and a Weeper system that's inspected around the footings. That's connected by gravity to the storm surge.
Deputy Mayor Huntley.
Through you, Chair, and thank you, Isabella, for coming in today. Obviously, this is a huge concern for you or for many others. I guess my question to Mr. Hancock is if the developers signed off on this, the grading plans and the grading plan consultant and that engineer and this engineer, and there's so many people I can't even keep track anymore of who they all are. But people could sign off on drawings, people can sign off on everything, but if there's an underlying problem that's here, at this stage, who's on the hook for it? Like, who needs to fix it? And if the ongoing process, which is what I think Isabella's talking about, is how does this, how do we prevent this from continuing? Like, if the drawing shows one thing and the reality shows another, how do we get those two to mesh? And who at this point in the game fixes it?
Through Mr. Mayor, to the Deputy Mayor, I think I indicated when I spoke on the phone with this resident that we certainly will investigate any complaints we get as Mr. Phillips has, and that's related to grading. And I had indicated that we certainly will look at any complaints. We have not, I have received this one as of Friday directly to me. I said I would have a look at it, and as Mr. Phillips has said, we will visit it to see whether it's, there is anything wrong or right with the drawings we have. And I probably would invite certainly the consultant there to attend with us. So we're willing to go to the sites. That's not the issue. What I was really trying to say is there is a paper process and a process that we follow to verify lot grading. If individuals have had problems with swales, maybe a fence installation, things like that, we'll certainly have a look at it and we can check whether there's water ponding after rain or whatever, we can do that. We also have indicated that we've not assumed the subdivision, so the builder and developers are still responsible. So we do look for cleanup, but I have not, this is, as I say, as of Friday, I did receive a call from this resident. We will do a follow-up with Mr. Phillips and ourselves with the consultant, but I was also describing the process that we follow and saying that we do follow a rigorous process to make sure there is some standard done on these builds. So it's not frivolous, it's not without detail to it. And certainly there are issues with grading. I mean, we've had swales that have low spots in them, things of that nature. I think she described an infiltration trench, which was in Brighton. We are aware of those types of techniques too, but So we're willing to go out and have a look at it. We will investigate and either agree with the property owner or agree with the consultant on whether it's right or wrong. That's our process. We will do that. It's not an issue.
Thank you, Mr. Hancock.
Sorry, just one last comment, just kind of as a partial answer to that. We did have, as I'm aware, one major drainage issue. Still kind of undetermined at the one part of what was the overall cause, but we did work with the builder. The builder came back and went kind of above what was normally required to fill a whole large area with stone to get better drainage than what we thought. Still, it looked like maybe it was possibly an underground artesian might have come up in that area because there was a large amount of water by a person's foundation, but the builder covered it full cost and they were very good to work with it, with fixing that. So if we do find that there is an issue somewhere, even if we can't explain it, and they brought in some engineers to look at it, we couldn't quite get it resolved, but they did fully cover the cost of fixing it all. So they have been good to deal with in that regard for getting things fixed that we find are issues. But there's any of the other drainage issues. A lot of times I've been out to places where owners start doing their own landscaping and affecting things a lot, putting down hard pavers, steps in between houses where there are swales, covering swales with hard top and stuff that can really cause a lot of drainage issues. And a lot of homeowners who think they may improve by putting in things like a French drain, but don't really know the consequences of doing that sometimes. And that can only cause problems. Because a lot of times French drains might freeze over in the winter and then you get a rain and now they're flooding where it wasn't supposed to be. So there are a lot of homeowners that go and do stuff not knowing what they're causing. So that can cause drainage issues. But so far to date, working with the builders, with the one that we had, they've been very good.
Go ahead.
Just to your point, just to clarify, I have made no changes to my verbiage. Just for the record, just so that stands. Thanks.
No. Like I said, as Kyle and I think all of staff, there's a commitment to follow up and do that due diligence for anyone who brings these sorts of concerns forward. So we'll look forward to that and leave it with Mr. Phillips and Mr. Hancock to continue that work and then go from there. And you're going to forward me that information. You have another question?
I apologize. Last question. Back to you, Mr. Hancock. You are the municipal engineer who approves the site grading after Val-d'Or in this particular instance for the Highlands and Lowbrook in the Highlands. So on that frequency table for the inspection of the pre-graded lots and swales, how often do you look as required? What does that term mean, as required, in a quantitative measure, if I may?
So first of all, it's not me specifically, but one of my engineering staff do approve the site grading plans, and they do attend the site with the consultant's inspector at pre-sod and post-sod. So they're there during the process, and they do a grading check as it's normally established by the consultant engineers. We are out to site at critical points, as they call, during the grading. If there's a specific complaint, usually myself or the staff will go back to review the complaint and look at the specific concern. So in this case, as we said, we'll come back to yours and have a look at it specifically.
So I apologize. Is that once during this process, the planning, or once it's graded? Is it twice? Like how often does that occur?
Generally, we do lots in a period of when, as they're finished, and there can be 10 or 12 lots done at one time, and they're normally there about 3 times our inspectors.
Thank you.
Very good. We need to move on with the delegation. Today, we have a motion before us to receive the delegation, and I know staff will continue to do their work and keep council abreast. Looking for a mover to receive that delegation. Deputy Mayor Huntley, Councillor Natchoff, all in favor? That is approved. We thank you, Isabella. We have one more delegation. I believe they're joining us remotely today. Mr. Schmidt, are you with us online? I think Carly's just letting you in now.
Perfect. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Go ahead, Mr. Schmidt.
Excellent. All right, so I'm here to present my delegation for the Gani Enduro 2023 in Millbrook Valley Trails. So once again, we're looking for permission from council to use the Millbrook Valley Trails to run our Enduro mountain bike race on October 1st, 2023. Perfect. So I can go next slide. So as an overview, so we're looking to run an Enduro mountain bike race, which is 6 timed race segments throughout a 46-kilometer course. Again, this year we'll look to start from the Agricultural Fairgrounds, 13 Frederick Street. We've been in touch with Deborah there, and we're just working up the paperwork for it. So everything is good from their end to start from the fairgrounds once again. We are looking to offer 2 courses again this year, a morning and an afternoon course to accommodate multiple ability levels throughout the race, along with a barbecue at the fairgrounds in between the 2 races. This year will be insured through the Canadian Venture Racing Association and will include the township on our insurance forms, as we've done in the past. In terms of participants, last year we garnered 127 racers with our last minute opening for registration due to the Ganaraska Forest closures from the storm last year. 2023, we're looking to aim to get 150 to 200 racers, and we're doing a big push to increase the number of women and youth through some outreach to some programs across the province, looking to boost women mountain biking. So we're going to reach out to them and see if we can get some of their numbers to come join our event and increase that demographic within our race. So the objective is seeking council permission to utilize the Millbrook Valley Trails Networks and Zion and Glamorgan Road. So we can go next slide. So the morning course starts there at the fairground, goes into the Millbrook Valley Trails across Zion Line. We stage a volunteer there to direct traffic along with some road signs at Zion Line, kind of at all the main intersections there. So Carveth, and then we put one down at Glamorgan as well, notifying folks that there is a bicycle race in progress. And to clarify again, riders are not racing for the majority of that loop. They are racing only on the trail segments within the woods. Anything that they're crossing roads or utilizing roads, they are in transition only and instructed to obey the rules of the road. So continue on, they go into the Millbrook Valley Forest trails, and then they come out on Elgar Drive, left on Zion, and back down Fire Road 310, back into Gandy Transit, continuing the race on there, back towards the Millbrook Valley Trails, and back to the fairgrounds for lunch. Next slide, please. Afternoon is very similar from the fairgrounds into the Millbrook Valley Trails, across on the Gandy Transit, up Fire Road 310, left on Zion, left on Glamorgan, and back into the Millbrook Valley Trails there. And then returning back to the fairgrounds at the end. Next slide. So as mentioned, 2 loops, morning loop starting around 10 a.m. Riders will be back around noonish for the barbecue, and then we'll head out again for the second half. Those who are continuing on around 1:30, 2 o'clock for the second loop. Anticipate they'd be back 4:30, 5 o'clock is kind of how it played out last year. The race will be sent out in groups of 10, approximately 2 minutes apart, to try and stagger riders in the woods so they're not all congregated at the start of each race segment. Each stage has volunteers at the top and bottom of it. Each stage is raced individually. There's no mass starting of each stage. They are essentially running a time trial, multiple locations throughout the woods. So we have volunteer course marshals placed at the beginning and end of each stage, arrows and tape throughout the woods to guide the participants throughout the race, as well as qualified volunteer staff on site all day. Road usage would be Fire Route 310, Zion Line, Glamorgan. I missed Elgar Drive on there as well. Participants will not be racing on the road there in transition between the stages. Signage will be placed along the roads to avoid any harm. Next slide. So again, the race, it's good for the community as well. It brings people into the community, which is good for local businesses such as food and lodging. It benefits the trail exposure to the greater mountain bike community. The more riders that ride, the more that come back and buy memberships, the more that will move into the community knowing they have good trails nearby, as well as community health, you have more local participation, and helps Millbrook Valley Mountain Bike grow their memberships and spread health to the community. I believe that is my last slide.
Yep. Thank you for the presentation, Alex. This is a
Thank you.
recurring event. Is this the third year we've been doing this now, or am I mistaken?
Yeah, this will be year 3.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much. Questions, members of council? Deputy Mayor Huntley.
Through you, Chair, and welcome back, Mr. Schmidt. And, this event has been fairly successful the last couple runs you've done of it. I guess I'm fully in favor of letting this go again. And I guess my question is more, how do we simplify this process for Mr. Schmidt so he doesn't have to come back and ask every year? Is there a way we can have this kind of a standing event if that's what he wishes, rather than go have him present every year the same thing? But anyway. I got silence there, apparently. I'm glad you've come in advance as well. I know in the last couple of times it's kind of been a last minute scrambles. It's nice.
Yeah, this
Nice
year,
job.
we're a little more ahead of our schedule this year, or on top of our game this year. Yeah, last couple of years with Ganaraska Forest issues and the storms has caused some delays on our end. So this year we knew early on if we could use the forest, which they're still pretty closed for mountain biking with the cleanup efforts. So we knew early on what we were doing with this new method.
And to your question, I think because this entity isn't a municipal entity, like it's not a division of Miller Valley Trails, or even, which isn't an entity of council either, the Millbrook Mountain Bike Association. I think there's really not much in the way around it, especially with the amount of moving and involved parties. I'm really happy to hear that the conversations with Deborah at the Ag Society are going well. I think it's a great addition and a great venue to continue to use that space for events like this. It's absolutely the right place and a great utilization of that space. So thank you for doing that. I don't know if there is a workaround for this, but and it's important, especially from an insurance standpoint, that the council and the township staff understand that that is appropriately done, and this is sort of the last formality stroke to the event itself. So, any other questions, members of council? Councilor Byrne.
Through the chair, yeah, I could see the date never being carved in stone, so that's going to be changing, and all the demographics for getting the road concessions and whatever. I'm curious at this point. I know it's a little early for October. The feedback you're getting when you're estimating the number that are coming to this event, have you got much in the way of feedback, pre-registered or whichever?
Not yet. No, our registration, we should be opening that this week. We want to wait for this, and then a couple of things we're getting lined up with our website. So we're going based off of last year, or the first year we had 100, second year 127. So we're projecting it should be pretty good. And everyone's response to it last year was very positive, and everyone seemed to be keen on returning and bringing their friends. And as myself and my other co-organizers and volunteers go out to other races, we have been telling everybody who wants to listen that they should come to our race. Additionally, I've organized with a couple other mountain bike race organizers an Ontario series for these enduro races. So the community for enduro mountain biking is growing in Ontario, and so we're kind of spearheading that. So I see no reason why our numbers would drop off. And I think for us, kind of circling to your date, we like that first weekend of October. So I think will probably be our stand-in date of that, whatever the first weekend is. That's where we'll keep shooting our race.
Thanks, Alex. Ms. Hurley.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, to council, just to let you know as well, the council did direct Mr. Schmidt to attend the Millbrook Valley Trail Committee, and the Millbrook Valley Trail Committee was very supportive. And I think another reason to let them, I understand what you're saying, Deputy Mayor, it would be nice to simplify it a little bit, but there is other activities that are going on. And so it's important that we sort of worked with them as much as we possibly can. We might not always know what's going on ahead of time. But as for this event and the date, we are on the Millbrook Valley Trail Committee. They're very supportive of the event going forward. I thought council should be aware of that.
Thank you, Ms. Hurley. Seeing, Councillor Natchoff, excuse me.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick question. If you could just speak briefly about how you're marketing this event, both directly to Millbrook and outside of Millbrook. Thanks.
Certainly. Outside of Millbrook, we've got our website. We've got a couple of different sponsors. There's a bike shop in Toronto that's sponsoring the series and this race. There's a bike brand that's potentially coming on board that help market these races. So we predominantly market through social media and word of mouth, as well as our website. So that's our main marketing. So local community, I guess, yeah, we don't do too much in terms of, other than the Millbrook Mountain Bike Club has been a great marketing for us to get out to the local mountain bikers, but towards the local community of come join a mountain bike race. We haven't pushed too hard for that. So if there's any suggestions, we're definitely all ears for that.
Thank you. Follow up, Councillor Natchoff.
Oh, there we go. Maybe just one suggestion there. We have what's called the Lion's Den sign on the way in on County Road 10 off the 115.
Oh, yeah.
I might suggest that you contact the Lions, or if you want, you can get in touch with me. I can put you through with the person. And it's a good resource where you could just say, hey, the race is coming, anyone local interested? And then you get a ton of visibility. I utilize it for our store for, Mother's Day and other events like that. So I know Ladies Night took advantage of it. So just a lot of eyes and cars driving by.
No, that's a great idea. I'll definitely look into that.
Yeah, great suggestion, Councillor Natchoff. Seeing no other hands, I guess the motion that we'll transition to, because we are looking for approval, is that council grant permission for the Enduro Mountain Bike Race for 2023 to utilize the MBT Trail Network and Zion and Glenmorgan and portions of Glenmorgan and Zion Road as identified in the map. Moved by Councillor Natchoff, seconded by Deputy Mayor Huntley. All in favor? That is approved. Thank you very much, Alex. Thanks for joining us today, and best of luck with the race. And we hope the weather abides by what you're looking for October. All the best.
Excellent. Thank you, Council.
Thank you. With that end to our delegations, I'm going to take a 5-minute recess, and then we'll reconvene the meeting to move forward the agenda. Thank you. We will now reconvene the meeting after that brief recess. Thank you for staying with us. If you are in fact staying with us. Next item of business is 9.1, the minutes of the regular council meeting held June 26, 2023. Any issues with those minutes as presented? If not, I'll ask for an approval of the minutes as presented. Councillor Natchoff, Deputy Mayor Huntley, all in favor? That is approved. Next, we have a number of minutes from committees and boards. First being the Cabinet Public Library Board meeting minutes from May 16th. We're receiving those for information. And I have a mover, Deputy Mayor Huntley, seconder, Councillor Edgerton. All in favor? That is approved. We have 3 sets of minutes in the next package. I believe we can do all of these together. That the minutes of the Sustainability Advisory Committee meeting of April 25th and May 4th, and the minutes of the Municipal Revitalization and Heritage Advisory Committee being held on March 16th and May 12th, and the Millbrook Downtown BA Board of Management meeting minutes of February 9th, 6th, and June 1st, all be approved as presented. Councillor Natchoff, Councillor Edgerton, all in favor. Those are approved. We now move on to the first report from staff. I believe Ms. Page will be, this is the brief overlay. I don't know if we need, does anyone have any questions with regards to, these are just schedules of the meetings coming up. It's a formality. I don't think we need Ms. Page to speak to it. If anyone would like to move the recommendations as before us in the report, Councillor Natchoff, Councillor Edgerton, all in favor. That is approved. Congratulations, Ms. Page, on all your success today. Moving on to 11.2, report fire department tender award. Mr. Chief Belfour, I should say. Chief.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. The recommendation before Council today is that Council award the Cabin Monaghan portion of the self-contained breathing apparatus cooperative tender TFD 23-01 to AJ Stone in the amount of $391,116 plus the HST $50,845.08. The total tender amount with the net municipal HST is $398,000 even. And this is within the 2023 capital budget for the SCBA's units as approved by council. As some background, this was a joint tender between ourselves, the Township of Cabin Monaghan and Otonabee South Monaghan. The units and the proposals were evaluated to ensure that we're receiving the best product for both townships' needs and circumstances. If there's any questions from council, I'll be happy to answer them.
Thank you, Chief. Just one question, just with regards to this, if all goes well with the approval today, you allude to the fact that these units could be in circulation by early 2024. So we're expecting delivery. Will they be delivered all at once, or are we thinking that as they come available in shorter increments, they'll be made available for the team?
Mr. Mayor, that's an excellent question. They'll come all together because the next step in the process is once we receive the units, we have to have them in place by February of 2024. We have to have all the members of the department trained in each of the units. So they have to be put into service all at one time, if that answers your question. And the training needs to be completed prior to February of 2024.
Thank you, Chief. Other questions, members of council? If not, thanks for coming in on budget with this as well, Bill. That's another achievement, and nice to see the cooperative tender being successful for both municipalities. That's also great, and we'll hopefully continue to see more of that, and hopefully more of that brings things in within budget. So seeing any other questions, we'll look for a mover. Councillor Edgerton, Deputy Mayor Huntley, all in favor? That is approved. That recommendation is approved, I should say. Thank you, Chief. Moving on, the next report is that with regards to the downtown mural project, which has been an ongoing project. Ms. Aya, if you would like to speak to it, please.
Thank you, Mayor. The report before council is PEB 2023-38 for the Millbrook Downtown Mural Project, with the recommendations that council approve the proposed location of the new mural in Millbrook, and that council directs staff to move forward with contracting an artist to complete the project.
Thank you, Ms. Aya. Questions, members of council? Councilor Byrne.
Through the chair, it's kind of being thrown around about moving the mural. How are you planning to take off the brick wall, or are we thinking somewhere down the road of probably keeping that in play and maybe spending a little money or time somewhere down the road to keep it fresh? Or the concept of moving something into a brick wall eludes me.
Through you, Mayor, the answer to your question is we're not moving it right now. We have put into our operating budget that we will maintain the mural. Our concern in the past has been that if the property changes ownership, that we would have to do something to, we would lose that mural. So that is part of the reason we're looking to do another one. But right now we have no plans to move the mural.
Thank you, Ms. Hyatt. Other questions, members of council? Seeing none, the recommendation in the report is twofold: that council approve the proposed new mural in Millbrook location, and that council direct staff to move forward with contracting an artist to complete that project. There is no budget implications for either of these recommendations because the budget has been previously funded, I think 2 years ago, maybe, that it's been rolled over now from previous councils. So there's no budget implications. Looking for a mover for those recommendations. Councillor Edgerton, Councillor Natchoff, all in favor. That is approved. Moving on to the next report, Mr. Conley, Peterborough County Official Plan ERO posting. Mr. Conley.
Thank you, Worship. Through you to council, you have before you report PEB 2023-39 County of Peterborough Official Plan ERO posting with two recommendations. That first, that council receive report planning 2023-39 County of Peterborough Official Plan ERO posting for information. And secondly, that staff be directed to provide correspondence, that is a letter to the ERO, outlining council position of support for approval of the county official plan. As council is aware, township participated and contributed to the development of the new official plan, which was approved by the county council June of last year. As part of that approval and the province's consideration of that, on June of this year, province posted on the ERO, the Environmental Registry of Ontario, a notice of approval of the county official plan for a 60-day comment period, which will run out on August 20th. Last week, I believe, county council dealt with this. They sent a recommendation with the idea that they had suggested that the 8 municipalities that comprise the county would send a resolution or a letter of submission supporting the approval of the county official plan, with the caveat that the province has a new provincial policy statement in place. They want the province to approve that first, and then have the changes to the county official plan be consistent or be significant, be corresponding to what the province's new provincial policy statement would be. So what we have before here is a report that supports the county's request to submit something to the ERO supporting the approval of the PPS and then the county official plan, and hoping that again that the county will have an opportunity to be able to review those changes in light of a new provincial policy statement and put that forward. In the attachments, there are modifications and the report the county council had and the modifications proposed by staff in discussions with municipal affairs staff. If you have any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Conley. One question, it might be for Ms. Page or between Ms. Page and yourself, with regards to the second recommendation, because of the nuance in the request or in the motion from County Council last week, being that, you know, there is a postponement request to defer the approval of the county OP until the PPS is finalized and we can review that understanding. I just didn't know if, I just didn't want staff to be bound by a letter saying they support the approval of the county official plan, because it's not exactly what's being requested in the motion from County Council. They're asking for a deferral, and then that there's an information provided about all of the things that we required to make that official plan consistent with the new PPS. So I just didn't want staff to get complicated with a letter that's asking for approval of an official plan when approval of the official plan isn't necessarily what the motion from County Council is requesting. So I'll let them sit with that for a few minutes and let other people ask a question if anyone has one. Of course not. Is any comments on that? I just want you to have enough viability rather than a specific directions asking for approval, because I think the intention is to have it approved eventually, which is a necessary thing so we can move forward with our own. But that's not exactly what, like, I would maybe feel more comfortable if Ms. Page is, you know, can advise, is maybe some sort of language to the effect of support for the motion of County Council with regards to the official plan. Because it's more freedom in the letter rather than asking for approval, because the motion's not really asking for approval, in my opinion. And maybe Deputy Mayor Hunley would like to chime in.
Through you, Chair. county's motion was not for the approval of the official plan. It was to defer the approval until whatever changes happening could be incorporated into it, so it didn't have to go back and get reapproved. So I think this request is more to approve or approach to the official versus approve the official plan. It's like nuance.
So your worship to Deputy Mayor Graham, Deputy Mayor Huntley, apologize. Absolutely. And when this report was first developed, this discussion was already going forward. I understand what County Council is trying to do. I think in my report, I've tried to identify the fact that it would be unique and certainly opportune if the province were to give the chance for the county to look at it, have staff look at it, reapprove it. I highly doubt that's the case. That's not really the way the province rolls these days. Notwithstanding, any letter of support would capture the nuance that you're talking about.
So I'm being too pedantic, seeing as especially given the fact that we're not in the county OP. So maybe I think there's enough leniency as long as there's a clear understanding that we don't need to change the motion. It sounds as though the clerk has advised me. So if staff's clear, I think council's clear. There seems to be no other questions. Again, we're not folded into the county OP, so it has less relevance for us, but our OP can't start until the county's is approved, so we can be consistent with it. So with that being said and that understanding, look for a mover for the two recommendations in the report. Deputy Mayor Huntley, Councilor Natchoff. Any questions with regards to the motions? No, and all in favor? That is approved. Thank you for that, Mr. Connolly and staff. Moving on, the next report is 11:15. Utility coordination concerns, request for meeting with Minister of Infrastructure. Mr. Connolly or Mr. Hancock? Mr. Connolly, okay, you're going to take the reins on this one. Thank you.
Through your worship to council, and I'll certainly call on Mr. Hancock to add anything I may miss. You have before you report PEB 2023-40, which is a joint report between Planning, Economic Development, and Public Works with respect to utility coordination concerns and a request for meeting with the Minister of Infrastructure and the Minister of Energy. Recommendation is twofold. One is that council receive report Planning 2023-40 utility coordination concerns for the development in Kevin Monaghan. And secondly, that a letter be sent requesting a meeting with the Minister of Infrastructure and the Minister of Energy. In the report itself, there's a lot of information with respect to development and growth and pressures. We recognize that we would like to work through the local MPP, Laurie Scott, in terms of being able to coordinate a meeting with respect to concerns we have that for a development that is approved or in the process of being approval, and the concern that there may be a barrier with respect to a coordination of electricity in the capacity on the grid, as well as any natural gas, and that may, hoping that that won't be a barrier or anything that would delay or negatively impact that development going forwards. Perhaps Mr. Hancock may want to add something from background.
Mr. Mayor, I think, and we as senior staff have been meeting both with Hydro One and with Enbridge to try and determine what they have available for capacity in the existing system and what they need for the future growth. Both Millbrook and we also talked about the Sire Line employment lands. Right at this point, we are being advised that Hydro One and Enbridge both have capacity for Tower Hill North, what they call low rise. Anything beyond that is in question, and they need to add capacity by bringing more hydro. That happens to be a hydro aerial system up County Road 10 to feed both the CSU and Vargas, which are in the draft plan process, and future commercial and future growth beyond Tower Hill, including Tower Hill's high rises. So they have said in the meetings that we've had with Hydro One senior staff, they need to have 1 year for design and 1 year for build. So this is a 2-year program to have the infrastructure extended. So at this point in time, your existing hydro capacity will only accommodate Tower Hill, what's referred to as low rise. That's your singles and your towns, about 550 units. Beyond that, we need this hydro capacity increase. In regard to Enbridge, a similar situation. Enbridge is saying that we have high pressure lines, of course, on County Road 10. GAIN will feed Tower Hill low rise, but beyond that, there are problems for any commercial, any other residential being in this area, and have no plans to extend services along Sire Line. So with the intent of the meeting for you to meet with the ministers is to look at how we might encourage, I mean, these expansions, but also have them plan that they plan their growth as we plan our growth. We think there's a missing link. We've been in touch with them over the last 2-3 years, trying to ensure that we had these capacities covered off. And we're now finding that they only have it covered to a point. So the intent of the meetings with the Minister of Energy and Minister of Infrastructure is trying to encourage the timelines to match that you have the capacities of your utilities to suit the development that you're approving. That's the bottom line. And we're asking for these meetings. We want to invite those ministers and whoever to come to our community and look at our growth areas and understand what we're planning. And then we will, try and facilitate what we need to get those allocations and capacities increased, particularly Hydro One and Enbridge.
Thank you, Mr. Hancock. So it's safe to say, just in summary then, like the growth or the planned growth over the last 5 to 10 years has been well aware, and staff's been in correspondence with the various utilities that you mentioned over that timeline. So it's not new that this, as soon as the wastewater plant was a requirement that was funded, I mean, it was under the debentures for that project were based on the requirement to facilitate growth, which is what we've been doing to facilitate that growth. And so it's, I guess, in a way, good news to hear that the continuation of the growth from a high-rise standpoint is not in jeopardy, but the immediate future thereafter growth is not going to have its basic needs met unless this works are conducted. And so we're trying to facilitate this meeting to expedite and ensure that the shortest timeline possible is what is pursued to address this sort of backlog or this sort of neglected infrastructure work that needs to follow along with the sort of growth that I know the province is supportive of. And just so council's aware, I've already spoke with Ms. Scott on the phone about this to let her be aware that this letter was coming and that she is already making some phone calls on our behalf, and we'll be coordinating a call with the CIO and myself with her to follow up on that and see how she can support us in facilitating this. But obviously it's a very big portion of the mandate for the provincial government, and definitely not something that they're going to leave us behind on. So hopefully we can facilitate these meetings and ensure that we continue to experience the growth that we're forecasting. So thank you for that. Questions, members of council, with regards to the report? Councilor Byrne.
Through the chair, I'm somewhat confused here because for the last 10 years or more, I've been listening to how the expansion that we're going under in the next foreseeable future was driven by the Ontario government. And then you're telling me today that this is kind of news that we don't have the infrastructure. Now I'm wondering who picks up the tab to upgrade high pressure lines for natural gas or the high voltage lines from hydro to drive this growth that this staff has been working on for years, been on the books for a long time. If it wasn't an initiative from the Ontario government, like I was told years ago, I'm having a long, hard look at this, trying to figure out what makes sense.
Well, thank you, Your Worship, through you to Councillor Byrne. So one of the things that it has been on the books for a while, we have a growth plan and we have targets that are dealt with at a county level, down to municipal level. And we have been, and as part of our regular land use planning process, we do circulate to the utilities, what is the growth, what's going through, what's being considered. And once the decision has been made by council at the local level and the upper tier, which subdivisions are, and official plan amendments, we make sure they are aware of that. We've had some good conversations with staff, so don't want to lay it all at the staff of the utilities. I think what they have is, in the last 3 years, the province has leaned in significantly on the planning process being the cause of the delay. They've made a lot of changes, sort of, shaved a lot of edges, and that is going faster, and it is consistent with the province's desire about jobs and homes in terms of doing that. What we have is, I think, the other moving parts, which is the grid, whether it's the electricity grid or the expansion, those mechanisms and those tools to help for that planning has been affected by, there was COVID. So I think at one point transformers were a reason why there were some delays. But the idea of it takes a year to plan and a year to build is sort of a rule of thumb we've been hearing with staff. Not to mention that if you have anything from an Enbridge perspective, anything that is a $2 million plus expansion, like a cost of that, then there has to be an application to the Ontario Energy Board. Apparently those regulations are holdovers from 1990. So again, in a regulatory policy legislative framework, I think, again, we're doing what the province is doing. We're doing our share. we're looking at how we can build and grow accordingly. I think there are other parts, moving parts to this, to the piece of the puzzle that we don't have and we don't have control. And that's why we need the meeting with the ministers. And perhaps if Mr. Hancock wants to add to that.
Again, through you to Councillor Byrne, the issue of cost of infrastructure, for the most part, as we understand, is being paid by the utilities. It's the planning process to get there that's causing the problems. They've said, for example, on Hydro One, they would bring a high voltage line overhead up County Road 10 from a line that used to formerly service the Millbrook Jail. It requires, as we said, 1 year for design and 1 year for build. They do expect to pay for that, though, through recoveries of the usage of those, both gas and hydro. So the financing was not such a key issue as the planning was to try and get the infrastructure in place to accommodate the growth. Because when we start to propose to service other subdivisions, other growth areas, there's no utility there to service it. So we're trying to deal with that. And if there is a cost that's unknown to us, we'd like to know that up front. We don't know that. And certainly we're asking the ministers to step in to make sure it's funded accordingly, properly, to allow the development to proceed. So these are some of the questions that we'll handle at the meetings.
Yeah, the Enbridge one is especially kind of like, I just don't understand it, because I think it was 2 or 3 years ago, was in the previous council, where we were being requested to submit, areas for specific, of opportunities for our gas expansion. And we worked pretty diligently and we were unsuccessful in our bid for that. But they're asking us for these more rural infrastructure suggestions when they're not even building in the service settlement areas the capacity that is required. It just seems illogical to me, but maybe I shouldn't be surprised when it comes to the separations of structure. So anyways, other questions? Councillor Byrne.
Through the chair, my concern is Enbridge was planning expansion up County Road 10 towards Bob Cajun. They did a bunch of work over towards Cambria in that, I don't know, last 5 years. And that facility or that expansion was a shock to most of the people that I know that live over there when they found out what their upfront cost was going to be after they thought they were getting a great deal by getting on natural gas, which at the time was cheaper, but they got nailed with a great big cost of getting it to them. So are we looking at the same problems possibly too?
Through Mr. Mayor to Councillor Byrne, I'm not sure that we totally understand the financial picture of the utilities, so I don't know that we can comment at this point in time. As our mayor has mentioned, we did apply for actual gas lines to be installed in different areas. One of the specific areas we keep coming back to was Sire Line. We asked for a gas line. We did not receive any approvals, and they did go ahead with Bob Cajun expansion. How they're funding that, we're not aware of, and we'll only find out from them when we meet. Right now, we were looking at what they have available for capacity to service our growth area, and it's not enough. So we need to do something now. And the reason we're trying to do it now is at least it can get into the planning stages and have some construction set out so we can accommodate the growth and not have to worry about not having anything available. We're looking on Tower Hill North itself, a subdivision that we're servicing. They're saying the Enbridge design won't be available for that subdivision until next year. That already is a problem for us because it's a delay. So we're already experiencing some problems. And we're saying beyond that, if we looked at commercial across the road, or we look at Vargas, or we look at CSU, we do not have anything there to provide them. And that means to me it's a problem. So we're asking utilities, rather than just say, we see the development, we know you're there, we want you to plan for it. That's really the cost factor will come out. We'll have to see what the developers have to pay or whoever. We're not sure, but it's really a case of sitting down and have them plan for our future.
Thanks, Wayne. Other questions, members of council? Councillor Byrne.
On another note, can you just give me some clarity to these 3 MZOs, their actual location and what we're actually talking about there, please?
I'm sorry, through your worship, to Councillor Byrne, 3 MZOs that were approved by council before. The first one is Cortha Downs, and that is over on Highway 28, so between Sire and Moore. And with that, there was the expansion of the entertainment center, the commercial part of the property, as well as a proposal for a plan of subdivision that was originally about 577 houses, now about 511. So all the way from basically from Sire Line on the west side of 28 all the way to Moore on that, filling in that whole property. Second one were two subdivision applications that were already in process, but because the developer had acquired other lands, wanted to expand the sort of denominator of the land base to change it. That was CSU and Vargas. Right now, those we've had 3 submissions on CSU. That's 611 homes there. And then Vargas just got a 4th resubmission last week. That's 262 units there, plus commercial. And then there's a commercial piece on the northeast corner of the unopened Fallis Line East and the east side of County Road 10. So that's the west side of, if you take Highlands South, CSU is to the west of that. Vargas is in that southeast corner running down between Coldbrook and Fallis Line in County Road 10. And then the third one was on Brown Line, at the corner of Airport Road and Brown Line. It's a proposal for a industrial park. It's a rural employment piece property, and that was the third MZL.
Thank you, Mr. Connolly. So there's 2 recommendations in the report. The only adjustment I would suggest to the third or the second is just that we include a copy of the letter also be sent to our MPP, Lori Scott, just to keep her abreast in that conversation. But that's a minor amendment, and we've already discussed it in the report. Any other questions? Seeing none. So there's a slight revision just to include Ms. Scott in the letter. So if everyone's clear on those 2, we'll look for a mover and a seconder for the recommendations. Deputy Mayor Huntley, Councillor Natchoff. All in favor? That is approved. Thank you very much, Mr. Connolly. I think you're up once again with regards to the Wiseman removable holding symbol HRH6. Mr. Connolly.
Through your worship to council, we have before you report planning PEB 2023-41, which is the Wiseman removal of holding symbol for HR-H6. One recommendation that bylaw number 2023-56 be approved to remove the holding symbol H10 from the rural residential exception 28 holding 10 RR-28-H10 zone as it pertains to part 1, plan 45R-17466 and part of lot 6 concession 8, and that's in Cavan. Council will be reminded of the fact that in February of this year, we had a public meeting with respect to the official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment for this particular property. This came back for a decision by council in April of this year, and county council actually approved it after that fact. So this is the last step in the process, which is to remove the holding zone based on satisfactions of conditions that were met by the developer, by the proponent.
Thanks, Mr. Connolly. Any questions? This is the last, I believe you said that the last step in the progression of this development, if I'm not mistaken, Mr. Connolly, is that correct? Very good. Any questions with regards to the report? Otherwise, we'll look for a mover and a seconder for the recommendation. Mover, Councillor Byrne, seconder, Deputy Mayor Huntley, all in favor? That is approved. Thank you very much, Mr. Connolly. Up next, we have Mr. Allison with regards to the demolition of the shelter at Maple Leaf Park. Mr. Allison.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. I have before you Parks and Facilities Report 2023-04, demolition of shelter at Maple Leaf Park. Recommendations are that council approve the total cost of $40,434.44, $39,735.10 plus net municipal HST for the demolition of the shelter at Maple Leaf Park as an emergency and time-sensitive purchase. Bylaw 2020-22, section 5.7.2, and that council authorize a total budget of $40,434.44 to be funded by $13,000 surplus from Maple Leaf Park and Old Millbrook School building repair and maintenance, GL 0147113210 and 0147233210 in the operating budget, and $8,000 surplus from Parks and Public Works Millbrook Yard, GL 0247213910 in the capital budget, and the $19,434.44 net deficit be transferred from general reserves. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Allison. Look forward to that report. Ms. Hurley, just a question just to sort of lead off. You know, this shelter's been in
this sort of a decaying state for almost as long as I can remember from my childhood playing ball in the park. Is there, like, has it been before previous councils to do something about this structure? Because as far as I recall, it's been shuttered. And I was by there the other day after going to the Chip Truck and Cabin for dinner. And I mean, I wouldn't let my kids underneath that or anywhere near it to that regard. But is there, is there something that I'm missing? Like, I just never understood why. Obviously, we've been investing in some other recreational facilities over the last few years that I've been around, but I just don't know why it's been left in the state it's been in for, upwards, I think, if I'm roughly estimating 15 to 20 years. If you can maybe, I'm just going to you because I don't think Mr. Allison and Mr. Conley were around that long. So maybe Mr. Hancock could weigh in too.
Me, Mr. Chairman, I'm not sure if I've been around that long neither, but we have not utilized that facility for the original purpose for quite some time. I don't think we've ever used it since I've been here, so I'm 20 plus years. There was water issues, there was all kinds of different scenarios that were going on at the time. I do remember a previous REIT wanting to not put the money towards repairing it because of the issues that they were having. And I believe it had to do with the water, but I'm not sure at this time. But they ended up at the council of the day, ended up deciding to put a new canteen in a different location. And so that's where that new canteen was done. And so therefore that facility never did have any of the repairs done. I think they were pretty extensive at the time because no one wanted to put the repairs into that facility at the time. And over the last several years, we've utilized it for storage only. However, we've allowed for, some of the user groups to utilize it as storage as well. So they've come and go with their I think it's soccer, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. So there's baseball. So, I mean, but it's right to a point now. Over the last several years, we've actually had a structural engineer done. Davenport came out and took a look at it and said that it should not be utilized for any public use in any way. And we should be very concerned of allowing the public to go in there. I know our own building official, he also has taken a look at the building itself as well, and it's in pretty much dire straits. But over the last couple of years, we have actually allocated some funds in our capital. But I think it's based, council always through the budget process has to prioritize funds and where it's best spent. So really, we haven't, we've been wanting to remove that building for quite some time. But I think under priority, under the budget process, we just have left it on the books until now to a point that it's really in bad shape. So therefore you have the report before you today.
And if I wasn't mistaken, there was in one of the earlier, I want to say 2-3 years ago in the capital budget, there was an estimate of $20,000 for the demolition. And now we're sitting at 40,000. So it's not getting cheaper to address this issue. Okay, Councillor Edgerton.
Yeah, I was in and looked at that there building, and I go back a few years on it, there was trouble with drainage coming down because the property on the south side is quite higher. The thing not working. And yeah, okay. So we're always looking for a shelter, little picnic area. I don't know why we can't tear down the building at the west end and leave the open area standing the way it is, because it's just the beams on the plates just go through that building and stop. So I don't know why we can't just tear down the brick building and leave the open structure for a picnic area, because people are looking to get in. There's a ball game or something on, and maybe some people want to go over there in the shade and sit there. So that would be my suggestion. That's what we do, rather than tear it all down.
Thank you, Councillor Edgerton. Other questions? Councillor Byrne?
To that point, I have been around long enough. We used to get sun back in the old days and people were looking for shade, and it's always rained since I was a kid. And when it rains, the games are canceled and they're looking for a place to get out of that rain without having to go to their cars. I was looking at it myself. I wasn't allowed inside the block part, but I don't think there's any real structural problems with removing the damaged block and supporting that roof, because as far as I can tell from outside looking around, the roof isn't in bad shape at all. And to put up that kind of shade structure or rain whatever you want to call it. It just seems like a waste of money. I get it that it wasn't built very properly way back in the day and there was issues with drainage, but I just look at that whole roof area as a potential rather than a liability.
Very good. Thank you, Councillor Byrne. Questions, other members of council? Seeing none, there are two recommendations in the report that council approves the total cost. There's a cost breakdown of associated. So just let me read the motions correctly in the recommendation. Sorry. That council approves the total cost of 40,000 plus net municipal HST for the demolition of the shelter at Maple Leaf Park as an emergency and time sensitive purchase. And that council authorized the total budget, yada, 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 the same sort of difference of the two recommendations. Councillor Natshaw.
Sorry, thank you through you, Chair. I actually like the idea of both what Nels and Jerry had just proposed, and I'm thinking before we make a vote on this, can we not maybe find out what the cost would be to remove just the brick stuff, and then we can make this decision instead of us just deciding on this now. It doesn't seem unreasonable to save the roof of this if by planning and engineering you think that this is something that could be saved. So is this something that like either we vote on it now and it gets torn down, or can we actually look at what it will take to knock the brick down and save the roof?
Sorry, Councillor Natshaw, you preempted me. I was just reading the motion so we know what's before us, but then we're just going to ask staff to comment on the alternative suggestion before us. Ms. Hurley.
Through you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Allison, I'm not sure. I'm just wondering if council wish to consider that option. I would probably request that we defer, and we're not in a position to state at this time what would need to be done in a building aspect or structural aspect to actually remove a portion of it and leave a portion of it. I don't know if we're really capable to have that information. We don't have that in front of us to even make that decision at this time. So if that is a council wish, then respectfully, I would say that we would come back to you after we've had an opportunity to see whether or not that's even engineering wise, structural wise. I would certainly seek to Kyle's expertise to see whether or not that can possibly be done in a safe manner. And I'm just not at liberty to provide that information to you today.
Thanks, Ms. Hurley. So that is obviously an option. We can defer the consideration of the report if we'd like to give staff direction, I think, with regards to the exploration of that facility. Is that something that Mr. Phillips is, or would we be consulting that review? I just wonder, because there's been other facilities that, we haven't maintained that, and that's obviously a public recreational structure. So there's a higher standard of obligation for what the structure design meets with regards to a public facility. So I just have concerns about that. If it's, no disrespect to Mr. Phillips, I have full confidence, but if we can do it in-house, great, and that's efficient. If not, do we need a motion to allocate some funds aside for this?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I would certainly seek Mr. Phillips' comments or suggestions on this, but we did already have an engineer review that structure. So we might just give them a call and just say, if we were going to do option B, what would option B look like and what that cost would be. But I'm not seeking additional cost for that.
Questions, members of council? Councilor Edgerton.
You, Mr. Chair, Mr. Phillips, like I'm just looking at just the open area, like and stopping there right at the bricks, like not going on any further with the roof that's over top of it. Tear down the other part, roof and all, but just leave the cement pad with the roof over it. And I think our Mr. Phillips is quite capable of having a look at that and making a decision without spending money on engineers. I'd have my confidence on him doing that. Thank you.
Really?
We appreciate your support on that. Thank you. However, that's something we'll defer to Mr. Phillips, and we'll have a conversation on what we need to do. If we don't need to spend the money, we definitely will not.
Very good. So it sounds like maybe we'll look to Ms. Page for clarifications on an alternate motion, unless Councilor Byrne or Councilor Edgerton or Councilor Natshaw want to make one. With regards to the deferral of the report, or I can help out, I guess. So deferral of the report and have staff through Mr. Phillips
have a review to see about the feasibility of maintaining the open air covered portion of the facility. Is that sound reasonable, Ms. Page?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to yourself and the rest of council, what I've drafted is that council defer the report to allow staff to give consideration to explore the option to maintain, I didn't have open air, but to maintain the shelter and have the removal of the structure / building.
Very good. So I guess we'll look for a mover and a seconder for that motion. Councillor Byrne, Councillor Natchoff, all in favor? That is approved. All right, moving forward. Thank you, Mr. Allison. Are you up again? Yes, you are. Parks and Facilities, one-time exemption, municipal alcohol policy.
I have before you Parks and Facilities Report 2023-05, one-time exemption to the municipal alcohol policy. The recommendation is that council approve a one-time exemption to the municipal alcohol policy 2017, designated areas in which alcohol is permitted in the Cappamonigan Community Center to permit in all public access areas.
Thank you, Mr. Allison. Questions with regards to council with regards to the report? Councillor Byrne.
Through the chair, this one-time exemption, I just like little clarity. That's for the whole rink area and everything. Is that why it's one time rather than we rent out the meeting rooms and stuff and they get liquor licenses? It doesn't require this. Is that I'm understanding?
Through you, Mayor, to Councillor Byrne. Yes, that is correct. So currently we, you can rent out the hall and have alcohol or the ice surface floor. So this is a one-time exemption for the pizza game to be able to serve alcohol in the lobby, the seating area, the ice surface, the hall, the track, the overlook room.
Thank you, Mr. Allison. Questions? Councillor Natchoff.
Thank you, Chair, through you. Mr. Allison, have we ever looked at actually applying for and getting a permanent liquor license for the facility so that this won't be needing to have to continuously apply for us? Like, I know we probably don't apply for a lot of SOPs, but that being the case, I think that we could conceivably have it as more of a draw for other associations and stuff to maybe want to do that, knowing that there currently is a liquor license in place.
Through your Mayor to Councillor Natchoff. Currently, right now, the user groups, they obtain their own liquor license and permits.
Sorry, but just as a follow-up, have we looked at or considered applying for a permanent liquor license at some point for the facility?
That's early.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I think this comes back again about how long someone has been in a position. Through you, Mr. Chairman, to Councillor, yes, we have had that before. And there was certain situations that we've decided not to go back to that. Whether it's liability, it's insurance, it's cost, it's responsibility, health and safety, it's management, staffing, training, etc. So therefore, we've chosen in the past not to go down that road. We've chosen that the renters get the liquor license, they bring it in, they bring it out. It's not there all the time. We're not responsible for it being there. So there's many different factors that we consider for not doing that.
Thank you. I understand. If that be the case, when they apply for their SOP, then do they add on an additional certificate of liability so that it doesn't fall under ours? Like, obviously it would fall currently under ours, but do they like top it up so that if there were an accident to happen, any additional, like we're capped at what the township would have to pay. I know that. So a perfect example, Nexicom owns Allen Road. And so we had at one point allowed the ball hockey tournament to have it there. They took out an additional certificate of liability insurance in addition to what Nexicom was carrying at the time, so that if there were an accident, Nexicom was limited by liability and any additional one was carried on by that.
Ms. Page.
Through Mayor Graham to Councillor Natchoff. So when there's a rental, Mr. Allison can probably speak better to this. From what I understand, depending on what your rental is, where your insurance applies, if there's alcohol, the premium changes. Maybe Mr. Allison can speak a little better to that.
Yes, so there is there's a chart we file which has low, medium, high risk. An alcohol event would be a high risk. The users are required to submit a $5 million liability certificate.
Thank you, Mr. Allison. Counselor Byrne.
Through the chair, to Mr. Natchof's concern, there's no big problem for a specialty group to get these liquor license, I'm assuming. So as far as a draw, like that we could actually market that facility with the potential for a party, that's not a big problem.
Mr. Allison.
Through you, Mayor, to Councilor Byrne. It's not really a problem. So it's Cap 25 is the brewery that they're using for this event. Cap 25, they do the Pete's games at the Memorial Center, so they're well aware of all the application they have to fill out, the insurance they have to have. Mostly it's just timelines to get their applications in on time.
Yeah, and I think some of the other hurdles have been like with volunteer organizations in the past have been the qualification with the Smart Serve. I mean, not everyone has gone through those training efforts, and I think there's been more complications that I've been aware of having people with that accreditation to go through it. But it's not that long a course to take. So usually with enough lead time, they're able to fulfill that with certain people taking on that responsibility. So that being said, the staff report is that council approved the one-time exemption for the municipal alcohol policy with regards to the Pete's game coming up in the fall. We'll look for a mover and a seconder. Councillor Natchoff, Deputy Mayor Huntley, all in favor. That is approved. Look forward to that event. Moving on, the next report is Public Works approval of discontinuation of environmental monitoring at Millbrook Waste Disposal Site. Mr. Hancock.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to council. I think this is a good news story from our part. Recommendation number one is that council receive Public Works PW 2023-18 regarding discontinuation of the environmental monitoring at the Millbrook Waste Disposal Site for information. And that number two, that council approve the transfer of the remaining Millbrook landfill reserve funds at the 2023 year end to the Winter Control Reserve. I just wanted to note in the body of the report that this monitoring has been in place, I would say, since the year 2000. It's been a long time. I became involved when I first started with the township in 2010, and myself and senior staff worked very hard with Cambian to get this landfill closed. And to permanently close a landfill is it doesn't happen very often. So I think that's a positive, and to have it not be a liability for the municipality is another bonus. So from the indication in the report, the location of the lands are shown in the one drawing, and the letter from the Ministry of Environment, MOE, is really saying that you are approved to close this, and this is a permanent closure. So it allows you to look at what you might want to do with the future, with the property in the future and with the adjoining lands. And it eliminates the liability that was always on our shoulders. So this is a good news story. And over the 13 years that I've been here, this has been an ongoing story. So I think it's not very often it happens. So we thought we'd just bring it to council's attention to let you know that it had been approved.
Thank you, Mr. Hancock. So in my understanding of the fiscal picture so far, there's $34,000 in change in the remaining in the reserve that none of that money is going to be required for the continuation of any monitoring or closure costs. So that will be returned to the general reserve for the time being, or will be a budget decision. So that's just, is that a clear or accurate fiscal picture? Just want to make sure.
We've indicated in our second recommendation that those funds be transferred to the Winter Control Reserve. So we're asking that be direction be given by council in this as a follow-up on this report.
That might have been in one of the earlier drafts of the report, but I don't see the that reflected in the Wayne, we worked together a while, Wayne, but I'm not reading that mind just yet. So anyways, with regards to that being said, thank you for that explanation, Mr. Hancock. We'll look forward to that consideration and further budget considerations in the fall.
That being said, any questions with regards to the report, Councilor Byrne?
Through the chair, two things just for my own knowledge. You referred to other lands around the Millbrook dump I wasn't aware of. I'm just curious what we might own in that regard. The other thing, I know there's been a bit of hysteria is what I would think of it mostly sometimes is the worry about the contamination from the old Millbrook jail. Does the dump site sit far enough over the other side of the hill that it's never been in question for so-called contamination, or does this relieve of us all of that too?
Through Mr. Mayor to Councilor Byrne, first of all, I should make sure the plan that I had of the properties is attached. Its recommendation seems to have changed. But the property is far enough away from the IO lands, and I'm not sure there is much contamination on the IO property. But on the issue of the Millbrook landfill, the plan before you shows the properties that we own there. We do own the adjoining property, which is the former Dowdy pit. It's about approximately 50 acres, and we have this landfill. So those lands from our part are sitting vacant. They are now not, there is no contamination. So there is future uses, future possibilities that can be looked at on the lands, and there is no impact of the Millbrook IO lands on the property.
And so just for clarity, the former Dowdy pit is approximately 50 acres and the rough size of the former landfill site is 10 and change or so?
It's approximately 5 acres, I think, if you look at it. It ends up being a total of approximately 55 acres, just round numbers.
Councilor Byrne?
Through the chair, the old gravel pit, it's no longer licensed. It's been rehabbed somewhat. Where does that leave us as a township as far as uses for that? Is that have to be, now that this dump is completely closed, does that change anything in regard to the gravel pit itself and the possible use of?
Through Mr. Mayor, Councilor Byrne, the Dowdy pit is not licensed, it is closed. So you have an opportunity to have looked at alternate uses on the property. The Millbrook landfill, one of the reasons that there was nothing done with the Dowdy pit was we had to have closure to the landfill to ensure there was no contamination cross border. And so this property now becomes available for future uses, but the pit is no longer being used. We have used it from time to time for storage of materials, but that's all. So right now it's a closed pit and a closed landfill.
Thank you, Mr. Hancock. Further questions with regards to the report? Otherwise, we'll look for a mover and a seconder for the recommendation. As it said, Councillor Natchoff, Deputy Mayor Huntley, all in favor? That is approved. The next report is, unless something else has changed, 1110 CAO report capital status. Ms. Hurley, any comments or updates with regards to this report? No? Any questions with regards to the report, members of council? Seeing none, we'll look for a mover and a seconder for the adoption of accepting the report. Councillor Natchoff, Deputy Mayor Huntley, all in favor? That is approved. Moving on, we are at the council committee verbal reports. I know there hasn't been much in the way of committee meetings. The only contributions I have is attending two different events, the BIA Ladies Night and the Centennial Pace 20th anniversary. Both were great events, both were represented well by different members of council at different times, but kudos to Centennial Pace for their anniversary and to the BIA for a successful Ladies Night and just skirting by that storm. And obviously, we should also thank the Fourth Line Theatre for commemorate them on the opening of the Cavaliers play. I know members of council were there opening night. I myself attended it later on the weekend. It was a fantastic show about local history and well done again in that regard. And I believe they had their reception as well after opening night at the community center. So I know that was well received as well. Other verbal reports? If not, we'll look for a mover to accept my verbal report. Councillor Natchoff. There you go. Deputy Mayor Huntley, all in favor? That is approved. There is no general business. There is no correspondence for information. There is one item of correspondence for action. That was a Centennial Place request that I know Councillor Natchoff was very interested on and came up during the election time. So I'm very happy to announce that Councillor Natchoff will be appointed to sit on the Special Services Advisory Committee on behalf of council. I don't think we need a mover for that. It's just we do need a mover and a seconder for that. So Deputy Mayor Huntley, you get a second that, Councillor Edgerton. Very good. All in favor? That is approved.
Bylaws, my favorite part. So the bylaws before us, I'm just going to go right to this entire portion, correct? So you have to bear with me. There's a lot of text here. Bylaw number 2023-51 being a bylaw to repeal and replace sections of the Village of Millbrook bylaw 85-5 designating 2 Hay Street in the township of Catamonigan, formerly the Village of Millbrook, as being of cultural heritage value or interest under Part 4 of the Ontario Heritage Act, and the bylaw number 2023-52 being a bylaw to repeal and replace sections of the Village of Millbrook BIA bylaw to 85-5 designated 5 Prince Street, formerly known as 17 Ann Street rather, in the Village of Millbrook in the township of Catamonigan as being of cultural heritage value or interest under the Part 4 of the Ontario Heritage Act, and the bylaw number 2023-53 being a bylaw to repeal and replace sections of the Village of Millbrook bylaw 85-5 designating 19 Ann Street in the township of Catamonigan, formerly the Village of Millbrook, as being of cultural heritage value or interest under Part 4 of the Ontario Heritage Act, and the bylaw number 2023-54 being a bylaw to repeal and replace sections of the Village of Millbrook bylaw 85-5 designating 21 Ann Street in the township of Catamonigan, formerly the Village of Millbrook, as being of cultural heritage value or interest under Part 4 of the Ontario Heritage Act, and that bylaw number 2023-55 being a bylaw to stop up, close, or sell the unopened road allowances described as the former Jameson Street and former Workman Street, and that bylaw number 2023-56 being a bylaw to remove the holding H symbol from the bylaw number 2018-58 as amended related to the lands described as Part 1 Plan 17466 in Part Lot 6, Concession 8, Geographic Township of Cavan, Township of Catamonigan, be read a first, second, third time and passed this 14th day of August, signed by the clerk and the mayor, and the corporate seal attached thereto, moved by Councillor Natshaw, Deputy Mayor Huntley. All in favor? That is approved. There is no unfinished business. Any notices of motion? Seeing none, the confirming bylaw being bylaw number 2023-57 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the meeting held this August 14th, 2023, be read, signed by the mayor and the clerk, and the corporate seal attached thereto, moved by Councillor Edgerton, Deputy Mayor Huntley. All in favor? That is approved. Lastly, we'll look for a motion to adjourn. Councillor Natshaw, Deputy Mayor Huntley. All in favor? That is approved. Upcoming meetings. Our next regular council meeting is Tuesday, September 5th at 1 p.m. And the Downtown BIA Board of Management meeting is Thursday, September 7th at 8 a.m. in the council chambers. The regular council meeting of Monday, September 18th at 1 p.m. will be in the council chambers. The Catamonigan Public Library Board meeting will be Tuesday, September 19th at the Millbrook Public Branch. The Municipal Revitalization and Heritage Advisory Committee meeting will be meeting on Thursday, September 21st at 9 a.m. in the council chambers. And Millbrook Valley Trails Advisory Committee meeting will be meeting Monday, September 25th at 4 p.m. also in the council chambers. Thanks very much. I hope everyone enjoys the rest of their summer, and we'll see you in September. Thank you.